Chapter 552. Reckless. Hua Jinyao raised his eyebrows and looked at Su Qingsang. I don't think so. President Hua. Ding Qing clenched her teeth so hard that they almost broke. President Hua, can you please be serious? This is Tianyu Group, Tianyu Company, not your home. Don't you have any problem with Mrs. Hua's behavior? No problem. Good. Then what did I do wrong? Ding Qing stared at Su Qingsang, then looked at Hua Jinyao in disbelief. She was the one who helped him get rid of Qiao Hong. Shouldn't Hua Jinyao thank her? But he fired her so easily. What did you do wrong? Hua Jinyao put an arm around Su Qingsang's shoulder. You just made my wife unhappy. Su Qingsang was held in his arms. She raised her head to look at him, and her eyes were almost sparkling. That's it? Ding Qing was so angry that her voice began to tremble. She couldn't control it. That's it? That's enough. Hua Jinyao turned around and kissed Su Qingsang's cheek. I'm henpecked. Su Qingsang almost burst out laughing. Yang Wenchang, who was standing not far behind them, was having a hard time holding back his laughter. Hua Jinyao was calm. He held Su Qingsang's hand tightly and said, Let's go. President Hua. Ding Qing couldn't help but step forward to stop them from leaving. Yang Wenchang stepped forward and blocked Ding Qing's way. Secretary Ding, you should have heard what President Hua said. Assistant Yang, President Hua is crazy. Why didn't you stop Mrs. Hua? Ding Qing was furious, but she still managed to find a trace of rationality. Everyone in Tianyu Group knew that if there was one person who could change Hua Jinyao's mind, that person would be Yang Wenchang. Secretary Ding. President Hua has already made things clear. Don't make a fuss. Like Hua Jinyao, Yang Wenchang didn't take it as Su Qingsang's willfulness. He listened to the audio file and knew who Ding Qing was. Her dismissal was not an injustice at all. As for why I didn't stop her, I'm sorry. The Hua family. But Mrs. Hua was the boss. Who asked you to upset Mrs. Hua? Su Qingsang didn't care how unhappy Ding Qing was. She followed Hua Jinyao into the elevator. She still had a surreal feeling. Her hand was held by Hua Jinyao, and she turned to look at him from time to time. Her gaze was very complicated. It was no longer just being touched. It was shock and disbelief. Hua Jinyao caught her gaze and squeezed her palm. Why do you keep looking at me? Have you realized that your husband is the most handsome man in the universe? Hua Jinyao. Su Qingsang was just a little angry because Ding Qing always talked nonsense in front of her. She didn't really want her to be fired. I was just joking with you. I don't really want you to fire Secretary Ding. She was not a willful woman, nor was she a woman who would make trouble for no reason. She came here today only because she didn't like Ding Qing's arrogant and aggressive attitude. Besides, Ding Qing knew that Hua Jinyao had a wife, but she still tried to get close to him. However, she had heard from Hua Jinyao that Ding Qing was quite capable. Since she was capable, it would be a pity to let her go. Hua Jinyao talked to Assistant Yang. Don't let Ding Qing leave like this. What? Are you not happy to see her? Just let her go. He had indeed planned to keep Ding Qing under his nose to keep an eye on her. However, Hua Jinyao changed his mind. So what if Lu Tongjia asked someone to come? Zhang Yang was on paternity leave, not maternity leave. If it didn't work, Hua Jinyao could ask Zhang Yang to come back. No, that's too childish. Su Qingsang didn't think it was appropriate. I was really joking with you. She does make me feel a little uncomfortable, but it's not enough to fire her. The most important point was, you fired her so casually and for such a reason. Maybe the board of directors of your company will scold you later. She didn't say who the board members were. The company belonged to the Hua family. For so many years, Hua Mingguang watched Lu Tongjia make things difficult for Hua Jinyao without saying a word. She didn't want to make things more difficult for him in the company. She didn't know much about business before, but ever since she met Li Qinshui, she gradually learned some things. For example, Li Qinshui kicked Su Qinghui out of the company. However, not many people knew the truth. They all said that Li Qinshui was too cruel and that she killed the donkey when it was no longer needed. She gave up the bow when she was done. Li Qinshui wouldn't tell her these things. However, there was still Su Yusin in the company. He would occasionally say a few words. She asked Shi Mengwan, who stayed in Lin City, and she could guess most of it. Li Qinshui completely belonged to the Li family. Li Qinshui fired Su Qinghui and people said that Tianyu Group didn't belong to Hua Jinyao alone. What if Hua Mingguang took this opportunity to make trouble for Hua Jinyao? Don't worry. It'll be fine. Hua Jinyao squeezed her hand. She's my secretary. Since she made you unhappy, she'll still be my secretary in the future. She'll work by my side and you'll have to see her eventually. It's inevitable that you'll be unhappy. It's better to let her go. But, Hua Jinyao kissed her on the lips and she couldn't say the rest of the words. Don't worry, baby. It'll be fine. His calling her baby made Su Qingsang's heart soften. She wanted to say something, but she didn't know how to change Hua Jinyao's mind. All right. Hua Jinyao looked at her serious face and gently pinched her cheek. Smile. Don't frown. You look like a little old woman. Go to hell. Su Qingsang waved his hand away. You look like a little old man. Yes. I'm a little old man and you're a little old woman. We're just a couple. Hua Jinyao didn't object. Su Qingsang also smiled and took the initiative to hold his hand. Okay. We'll be a pair of old men and old women. If she could hold this person's hand until the end of her life, then this life would really be perfect, wouldn't it? Hua Jinyao's reaction was to hold her hand tightly and not let go. Old Master Hua looked at Hua Jinyao with concern in his eyes. Why do you look a little thinner? Have you been busy at the company recently? It's been all right. Hua Jinyao had been sick for 2 days. Although he recovered quickly, he had been busy during this period. He didn't actually look thinner, but his complexion had always been a little worse. Take care of yourself. Don't be too tired. Old Master Hua was still very concerned about this grandson of his. There was a lot of concern in his words. Hua Jinyao was touched and his expression was a little moved. Thank you, Grandpa. I know. Qingsang. Old Master Hua looked at Su Qingsang, who was sitting next to him. Jinyao always doesn't care about his own affairs. Since you're already married, you should be more responsible and take care of him. Grandpa, don't worry. I will. Su Qingsang didn't need Old Master Hua to tell her to take good care of Hua Jinyao. However, Hua Jinyao was obviously busier than before these days. She knew that it wasn't good for his recovery, but she couldn't stop him. She thought that Hua Jinyao was busy because Ding Qing left. She felt a little guilty because he was short of someone to take care of. Was she causing trouble for him? Thinking of this, Su Qingsang couldn't help but feel a little guilty. It wasn't that Old Master Hua didn't know that, but he just said it casually. Grandpa, what are you talking about? I don't need Qingsang to take care of me. I should take care of her. Take care of each other. Take care of each other. Old Master Hua liked to see the two of them getting along well. Nothing could make him happier than seeing his grandson and granddaughter-in-law get along well. At this time, Lu Tongjia came downstairs. After venting her emotions on Su Qingsang the other day, she felt a little uncomfortable these days. She didn't look very good. As soon as she came downstairs, she saw Old Master Hua Jinyao and Su Qingsang looking at each other happily. She slightly frowned, walked to the sofa and sat down. Hua Jinyao saw her and greeted her. Su Qingsang followed suit and called her auntie. Ever since she found out about the knot in Lu Tongjia's heart, the way she looked at her was a little complicated. Rationally, she knew that Lu Tongjia was also a pitiful person, but emotionally she couldn't accept Lu Tongjia venting her anger on her. Lu Tongjia acted as if she didn't see Su Qingsang's gaze. She would never forgive Hua Jinyao. Even if Su Qingsang found out, it would be the same. It's rare today. It's not the weekend. You still remember to come back to see your grandpa? Hua Jinyao didn't respond. Su Qingsang slightly frowned because of the hostility in her words. She looked at Hua Jinyao with some worry. No matter how much Lu Tongjia didn't like him before, she probably didn't do anything to the company, but now, I can come to see Grandpa even if it's not the weekend. Hua Jinyao wasn't affected by Lu Tongjia's cold face at all. I can come if I want to. Yeah, you're old enough to have your own ideas. You don't need other people's permission to do anything. You can do it on your own. What she said was really a little strange. Old Master Hua glanced at Lu Tongjia. Tongjia, I'm happy that the child came to see me. What are you talking about? What am I talking about? I'm talking like a normal person. Lu Tongjia looked at Hua Jinyao with obvious dissatisfaction in her eyes. Dad, you don't know what Hua Jinyao has done. What's wrong with me saying a few words to him? Tongjia? Old Master Hua knew that Lu Tongjia didn't like Hua Jinyao and that she had a knot in her heart. For so many years he didn't say anything, but recently Lu Tongjia seemed to have gone more and more overboard. Now he had the intention to side with Hua Jinyao. He was a little unhappy about Lu Tongjia's provocation. Dad, do you know? With one word, Hua Jinyao fired an employee who was doing a good job in the company. Lu Tongjia glanced at Hua Jinyao and then looked at Old Master Hua. She didn't hide the sarcasm and dissatisfaction in her eyes. Chapter 553. Lu Tongjia didn't expect that Ding Qing hadn't even been his wife for 3 months. Hua Jinyao fired her just like that, and the reason was so ridiculous. When she heard that, she was so angry that she almost died of anger. If she hadn't been sick and had rested at home for a few days, she might have gone to him and questioned him. Old Master He didn't understand. He glanced at He Jingyao. He didn't believe that He Jingyao was a man without a sense of propriety. He fired her just because of what Su Qingsang said. Speaking of this, Lu Tongjia was even more dissatisfied with Su Qingsang. She knew that she was an illegitimate daughter, and that she was inexperienced and incompetent. Previously he had noticed that she had some manners. She wasn't someone who didn't know manners. But now, because of her inexplicable jealousy, He Jingyao fired her employee like a fatuous emperor? Only Su Qingsang could do something like that. Thinking of this, Lu Tongjia couldn't help but ask. She turned around and looked at Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang, I really want to ask you, what about your upbringing? Is your upbringing telling you to meddle in your husband's business? Is it because of your family upbringing that you kick people out just because you don't like them? Su Qingsang, if that's the case, then I've learned a lot. Su Qingsang pressed her lips into a straight line. She had thought that she had been a little irrational that day, but now she was speechless. Old Master He didn't believe that Su Qingsang was that kind of person. He glanced at He Jingyao and said, Isn't your secretary Zhang Yang? How did he offend Qingsang? Old Master He had been to the company many times, and Zhang Yang had run errands for He Jingyao. Hearing Lu Tongjia's words, he couldn't help but look at Su Qingsang. He had a good impression of Zhang Yang. He was down-to-earth and hard-working. Most importantly, Yang Wenchang was steady and meticulous. Zhang Yang was lively and quick-witted. Both Zhang Yang and Zhang Yang were good helpers for He Jingyao. Which one is Zhang Yang? Ding Qing. Lu Tongjia glanced at Su Qingsang as she spoke. He Jingyao has a new female secretary. She, on the other hand, argued with He Jingyao to fire her just because she found He Jingyao pleasing to the eye. He Jingyao hadn't said a word before. Now he raised his head and glanced at Lu Tongjia. Finally he said, Mom, you really know a lot about me. Ding Qing has only been here for a few days. Mom remembers her name quite clearly. Lu Tongjia's expression changed slightly, but she soon calmed down because of her age. She looked at He Jingyao with a cold face. What's wrong? Am I wrong to care about you? Thank you for your concern, Mom. He Jingyao said ambiguously. When his eyes met Lu Tongjia's face, his gaze was deep and meaningful. His gaze was suggestive, making Lu Tongjia feel uncomfortable. He Jingyao, what kind of attitude is that? What do you mean? I'm your mother. What kind of tone are you using to talk to me? He Jingyao didn't lower his head, nor did he look away. He just stared at Lu Tongjia. At first, Lu Tongjia stared back at He Jingyao confidently, but in the end she was defeated by him. She turned her face away, feeling that it was really hard for her to swallow her anger. She couldn't help but stare at He Jingyao. What's wrong? Can I say it? You dared to do it. Why are you afraid that I will say it? Su Qingsang looked at He Jingyao worriedly. She subconsciously reached out to hold He Jingyao's hand. He Jingyao's expression didn't change at all. He just looked at Lu Tongjia calmly. Lu Tongjia became angrier. She turned to Old Master He and said, Dad, tell me. I've been in the He family for so many years. When have I ever interfered with Mingguang's business? When have I not stood behind Mingguang, not interfering, not caring? Su Qingsang, on the other hand, interfered with He Jingyao's business as soon as she came here? Let me ask you, Dad. Is this reasonable? Is it? Old Master He didn't speak. He subconsciously looked at Su Qingsang and said, Qingsang, stand there. Is this true? Grandpa. Su Qingsang bit her lip. This was indeed her fault. I can explain this, She said, I can explain this. Explain? Are you trying to deny it? Lu Tongjia was aggressive. Su Qingsang felt weak. At that time, she was just angry at Ding Qing's provocation. She really didn't expect that it would have such an impact on He Jingyao. She couldn't help but look at Old Master He and said, Grandpa, I'm sorry. It's my fault. Grandpa. He Jingyao grabbed her hand and interrupted Su Qingsang. He glanced at Lu Tongjia, then met Old Master He's disapproving look. I did fire Ding Qing. But I didn't fire her because of Qingsang. I fired her because of Ding Qing. She seduced me. Hearing that, Su Qingsang widened her eyes and looked at He Jingyao. Even Lu Tongjia's expression changed. He Jingyao, what are you talking about? How could Ding Qing? Why not? Mom, do you know Ding Qing that well? Lu Tongjia stopped talking and averted her eyes unnaturally. She's your secretary. How could I know her? Old Master He looked at Lu Tongjia suspiciously. Lu Tongjiao forced herself to calm down and said, Jinyao, don't talk nonsense just because you want to cover up for Su Qingsang. You know very well how Ding Qing left. I know very well indeed. I think you know better than me, don't you? Hua Jinyao added meaningfully. Lu Tongjiao looked into his eyes. For a moment she almost thought that he knew her plan, but then she thought that it was impossible. Of course I know. What you did has spread in the company. Do you think I don't know? Yeah. The news spread everywhere. It's only been 2 days but you've already heard about it. This is the first time I know that people in our company are so gossipy. Lu Tongjiao moved her lips and was about to say something. Hua Jinyao added, Mom, you really care about Ding Qing, don't you? He leaned forward slightly and said in a deep voice, I just don't know if you care about the other employees in our company as well. For example, Qiao Hong? Lu Tongjia's expression changed as soon as she heard Qiao Hong's name. She widened her eyes and looked at Hua Jinyao. Her hands were slightly trembling by her sides. However, it was only for a moment. Very quickly she completely calmed down. Hua Jinyao, why are you talking in such a weird way? I care about Ding Qing only because you've crossed the line. Do you think that I'm interested in just anyone? Really? You've crossed the line to fire one employee. As a subordinate, Ding Qing didn't want to work hard. Isn't that too much? He raised his eyebrows and looked straight into Lu Tongjia's face with his dark eyes. There was a deep meaning in his eyes that only they could understand. Lu Tongjia didn't say anything. She was close to Hua Mingguang, so she had never thought about building her own power in Tianyu Group. If Hua Jinyao hadn't annoyed her this time, she wouldn't have come up with such a plan. The atmosphere between the mother and son was really weird. Su Qingsang wanted to tell the truth, but judging from Hua Jinyao's expression, she felt that there was more to it than meets the eye. Thinking of Ding Qing's provocative words, she believed that Hua Jinyao was probably telling the truth. Ding Qing really wanted to seduce Hua Jinyao, but she didn't succeed. Her eyes suddenly lit up. Did Hua Jinyao want to fire Ding Qing for a long time? Was he just using her as a cover? That's enough. Old Master Hua also noticed that something was wrong. At his age, how could he not see that something was wrong with Lu Tongjia? Ding Qing was probably one of her people. He just didn't know what was wrong with his daughter-in-law. Why was she trying to push someone to her son's side? Shut up all of you. I still want to live a peaceful life for a few days. I'll ask Uncle Cheng to prepare the meal. If you want, you can have a quiet meal with me. If you don't want it, then forget it. Hearing his words, the others stopped talking. Grandpa, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for making you worry. Hua Jinyao took the initiative to apologize. But don't worry. I'm in charge of the company. I know what I'm doing. As long as you know what you're doing, I believe that you're a good kid. I'll take care of it. Su Qingsang lowered her head and looked down. She thought about what Lu Tongjia and Hua Jinyao had been talking about and felt that something was wrong. However, her grandpa was here so she couldn't ask. No matter how unhappy Lu Tongjia was, she didn't mention it again since old Master Hua had spoken. Besides, she did feel guilty about what had happened to Qiao Hong. For the rest of the meal, she didn't cause Hua Jinyao and Su Qingsang any more trouble. This allowed the two of them to have a quiet meal. In fact, Su Qingsang wanted to ask old Master Hua about what had happened back then. However, today wasn't a good time. She could only wait. After dinner, Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao got in the car and left. Almost as soon as they got in the car, Su Qingsang couldn't help but ask, Ding Qing, did you want to fire her for a long time? Hua Jinyao turned his face and said, Honey, what are you talking about? Didn't I fire her because you said you didn't like her? Did you? What else? Hua Jinyao raised his eyebrows with a naughty smile on his face. Su Qingsang twitched the corner of her mouth. She didn't believe a word that Hua Jinyao said. All right, honey. It's still early today. Why don't we go watch a movie? Su Qingsang was no longer annoyed by his sudden change of topic. She added coldly, Speaking of which, did Ding Qing really seduce you? Hua Jinyao put his foot on the brake and turned to look at Su Qingsang. Honey, I was just joking. Ha. I was joking too. Su Qingsang smiled at him and said, All right, we're going to watch a movie. Let's go. Yes, let's go. Chapter 554. Su Peijian looked in the mirror and painted her lips red. Looking at the mirror, he pouted his lips. After confirming that his current appearance was enough to turn the world upside down, he stood up. She put on her coat and looked at herself in the mirror again to make sure that every detail was perfect. Then she picked up her bag and prepared to go out. However, as soon as she opened the door, she ran into Xiang Kaiping. She stood at the door with her mouth open and was about to call her. Mom, what are you doing here? It's almost dinner time. Are you going out again? Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Peijian and asked carefully. Yes, I have an appointment. I have something to discuss. Xiang Caiping's lips moved, but she swallowed what she wanted to say. You haven't eaten at home for 3 days. Peijian, Mom, I really have something to discuss. It's not like I'm playing. Su Peijian blinked and looked a little aggrieved. I just came here and I'm not familiar with this place. I have to make more local friends, right? Xiang Kaiping looked at her daughter. Her appearance was gorgeous and her makeup was exquisite. Her clothes were appropriate. If not, she would still be the girl from a rich family in Lin City. She was in a trance for a moment. If she hadn't accepted this daughter as her own, what would she be like now? Peijian. What's wrong? Su Peijian's sudden seriousness made Su Peijian retract her slightly careless attitude. The joking expression on her face disappeared. What's wrong? Nothing. I just feel that you don't want to go back to Lin City. Mom, why do you say that? I'm serious. Xiang Kaiping had thought a lot about it. The more she spent time with Su Peijian, the more she thought about the months she spent with Su Qingsang. She knew it was wrong, but she couldn't help comparing it. Su Peijian didn't like her and couldn't accept her. She knew it all. Her life experience was there and her feelings and knowledge were there. Especially compared to what Su Qingsang did and now Su Peijian. She knew it very well. Su Peijian probably didn't want to accept her as her mother. I always feel that you like Lin City more. Actually, if you really want to go back to Lin City, you can. I'll beg your father and tell him to let you return to Lin City again, Mom. Su Peijian's expression suddenly changed. What are you talking about? I mean it. Xiang Kaiping didn't want to think that way, but Su Peijian was different from Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang had grown up as an illegitimate daughter of the Su family. She had never been loved by Su Qinghui or Li Qianxue. But what about Su Peijian? She was raised in the palms of the Su and Li families. What conditions did the Li family have? What conditions did the Su family have? She could not adapt now, she understood. Your father owes me something. If I go and save him, trust him, Mom? Su Peijian raised her voice. If you dare to look for him, I won't recognize you as my mother anymore. Xiang Kaiping was startled by Su Peijian's words, and her expression changed. She stood there, obviously at a loss. Su Peijian cleared her throat, realizing that she had been too aggressive. Mom, listen to me, we're fine as we are. It was true. Just the way it is now is good enough. Really? She would be lying if she said she didn't hate Su Qinghui. But she also loved her daughter dearly. Su Peijian suppressed the dissatisfaction in her heart and forced a smile on her face. Mom, listen to me. That's what we do now. We mother and daughter depend on each other. As for my father, ever since he kicked me out, I've never been able to forgive him. So, don't say anything like that again. I won't say. Xiang Caiping's expression was a little ingratiating, but it was different from when she was facing Su Qingsang. She was still a little afraid of Su Peijian. Peijian, can you stop running around outside after you're done with your work? Su Peijian furrowed her brows. She wanted to retort, but when she saw the perturbed look on Xiang Caiping's face, she didn't say anything. Okay, I got it. I've been busy lately. Don't worry. I will definitely come home more often to accompany you. Is that okay? Okay. Xiang Kaiping didn't dare to say anything else. She watched Su Peijian pick up her bag and leave. She leaned against the wall and couldn't help but think of Su Qingsang again. If it were Su Qingsang, she wouldn't just leave her like that, would she? If it were Su Qingsang, she would definitely stay to comfort her. Of course, if it were Su Qingsang, she wouldn't always run around outside. Ever since she recognized her, she stayed at home to accompany her old lady. Realizing what she was thinking, Xiang Caiping's heart felt bitter again. Her hatred for Su Qinghui was really at its peak. It was all his fault. Su Peijian didn't know the struggle in Xiang Caiping's heart. She got into the car and didn't rush to start it. Instead, she turned around and glanced at Xiang Kaiping. Xiang Caiping's words today surprised her. She actually thought that she wanted to go back to Lin City? How could she go back to Lin City now? It wasn't easy for her to get close to Hui Yifan. It was a good time. She didn't want to go back to Lin City. Li Qianxue, Su Qinghui, and even old Master Li. She said it so nicely, saying that she loved her, but in reality, wasn't she just lying to her? If she really loved her, she wouldn't have been kicked out of the house. It was ridiculous that Xiang Kaiping still wanted to beg Su Qinghui. Other than Su Qingsang, who had stolen her status, the person she hated the most in her life was Su Qinghui. If he really cared about her, he wouldn't have told anyone about it. Wouldn't it be better to let her be the daughter of the Li family for the rest of her life? It was all Su Qinghui's fault that she was in this situation today. On this point she and Xiang Kaiping were on the same page, which was rare. They both hated Su Qinghui. No matter how emotional she was, when Su Peijian appeared in front of Hui Yifan, she had already composed herself. Su Peijian entered the private room of Xiangshan House and smiled at Hui Yifan, who was sitting in the seat of honor. "Mr. Hua, you're here." She walked up and sat down next to him. She looked around and didn't see anyone else. "Why are there only two of us? Are the others not here yet?" Hui Yifan picked up the teapot on the table and poured her a cup of tea. "There's no one else." He moved closer to her with a faint smile on his face. "It's just the two of us today." Su Peijian pursed her lips and turned to look at him. She raised her eyebrows and looked very flirtatious. "Just the two of us? What do you mean, Mr. Hua?" Hui Yifan put down the teapot and put his hand on the back of Su Peijian's hand. "Peijian, you're so smart. How can you not know what I mean?" Su Peijian gently pulled Hui Yifan's hand away and moved back a little. "Mr. Hua, I told you last time. Don't treat me like the women you've met before." "I'm not one of those women, Peijian, why do you say that? Can't you see how much I've cared for you these days?" Hui Yifan moved closer to her again. He put one hand on the back of the chair and held Su Peijian's hand with the other. Su Peijian didn't move his hand away. Instead she smiled. "Mr. Hua, I'm really flattered by your words. Since Mr. Hua said that you don't treat me like one of those women, do you dare to go home with me to meet my parents?" Hui Yifan was stunned for a moment, but only for a moment. Soon he smiled. "Are you sure?" "Of course. Or do you not dare to?" Su Peijian's eyes were provocative. She was beautiful, and looking at people like that would make them look flirtatious. For a moment Hui Yifan felt a little itchy. He couldn't help but pull her up and let her sit on his lap. "If you dare to take me there, I'll go." As Hui Yifan spoke, he raised Su Peijian's chin with one hand. "Even if you want to meet my elders, you can." He wasn't talking about meeting her parents, but meeting her elders. That meant two different things. Su Peijian pursed her lips and looked at Hui Yifan. Her eyes flickered. "Really? You don't believe me?" Hui Yifan chuckled and put his big hand around her waist. "Why don't you accompany me home this weekend to meet my grandfather?" "Your grandfather?" "Of course." Hui Yifan nodded. "On the surface, everything in the Hua family is decided by my uncle. But if something doesn't get my grandfather's approval, I'm afraid it can't be done. Especially when it came to important matters." He glanced at Su Peijian's face and raised the hand that was on her chin again. "I think my grandfather will like you very much." The reason why Hu Jinyao could get more points was because he married Su Qingsang and caught the old man's eyes. It was just a woman. If Hu Jinyao could make the old man happy through a woman, he could naturally do it too. "What if your grandfather doesn't like me?" Su Peijian lowered her head slightly, and his hand happened to touch her lips. She looked up at him and opened her red lips slightly. Just like that, her brightly painted red lips bit his finger. Hui Yifan narrowed his eyes. If it weren't for the inappropriate occasion, he would have taken this woman right now. "As long as I like you, that's enough." Su Peijian smiled. Her lips that were gently biting his finger opened slightly. "Then I really have to go see your old man." "That's good. I won't let you down, right?" Hui Yifan narrowed his eyes and watched her lips move away. Without thinking, he pulled her body closer, lowered his head and kissed her heavily. Su Peijian didn't let him refuse. She raised her hand and put it around Hui Yifan's neck. As soon as her lips opened, she took the initiative. Hui Yifan's eyes flashed with surprise. More than that, he was pleasantly surprised. He had subdued Su Peijian. The kiss between the two of them was like a competition, and it all depended on who would admit defeat first. After all, Hui Yifan was a veteran in love. In the end, Su Peijian lost. He hugged her body tightly and pressed her waist down. He let her feel the fluctuations of his emotions at that moment. Although she couldn't stand that kiss and withdrew first, he didn't completely win. "Peijian, sooner or later I will make you mine." Chapter 555. You don't believe me? I do. Su Peijian looked at Hui Yifan's face. To be honest, Hui Yifan wasn't bad looking. Most importantly, she liked the ambition in his eyes. "However, I feel that in the end you might become mine." "Really? Why don't we wait and see?" Hui Yifan was more and more interested in Su Peijian. "No problem." Su Peijian smiled brightly. She thought of something and found it funny. Su Qingsang, aren't you relying on the Hua family?" "I'll let you know now. You're not the only one who can marry into the Hua family. I can too. I don't know how much the Hua family will be stirred up by the two of us. I'm looking forward to it. Achoo. After dinner, Su Qing-sang, who was browsing Weibo in the living room, sneezed. Hua Jinyao turned to look at her. Are you not feeling well? Did you catch a cold? I don't think so. Su Qing-sang touched her nose and felt that the sneeze was a bit strange. You don't? I think you caught a cold because you took care of me 2 days ago. Hua Jinyao looked at Su Qing-sang's face and couldn't see anything wrong. Why don't you stop going to work tomorrow and rest at home? You're exaggerating. Su Qing-sang glanced at him. I think my mother misses me. I'm going to call my mom later. I don't have anything to do. Why should I rest? Meeting Hua Jinyao's disapproving look, Su Qing-sang couldn't help but laugh. Don't always think of me as a woman like a doll. I'm in good health. Last time you were sick, I took care of you for so long and slept in the same bed with you. I was fine, wasn't I? Hua Jinyao suddenly approached her and said, Honey, are you asking for credit? Can't I ask for credit? Su Qing-sang raised her eyebrows and joked with him. After that day she didn't ask about Lu Tongjia again. To her, since Hua Jinyao didn't want to talk about it, she wouldn't ask. She didn't want to ask old Master Hua either. Because she thought of another possibility. If what Lu Tongjia said was true, what should she do? Why did Hua Jinyao have nightmares all these years? After all, he was only 12 years old. If he had done something wrong or said something wrong in a moment of desperation in order to save his own life, wouldn't it be understandable under such circumstances? That day, old Master Hua looked like he wanted to say something. Did that mean something? Old Master Hua actually knew whether it was possible or not. However, she had already lost 2 grandsons. She didn't want to lose Hua Jinyao as well. After understanding these things, he had these worries in his heart. Su Qing-sang didn't want to ask any more. No matter what choice an underage child made in that kind of situation, she thought it should be understandable, right? Could they all be forgiven? She could understand Lu Tongjia's stubbornness. So let's leave it at that for now. She looked at Hua Jinyao and put that matter aside. He did not mention that matter at all. She didn't mention it and neither did Hua Jinyao. The two of them didn't mention that matter, but they felt much closer to each other. Just like now. Hua Jinyao put his mouth close to her ear and said in a low voice, Then honey, how do you want me to thank you? Su Qing-sang felt the heat of his breath brushing against her ear. She shrunk her neck a little. To be honest, Hua Jinyao's masculinity was fatal. Especially when he was talking to her in such a low voice. Stay away from me. I'm afraid I can't. Hua Jinyao put one hand around her waist. Speaking of which, I'm really lucky. I've married such a good wife. How can I not get closer? Don't you think so? Su Qing-sang blushed. She put her hands on Hua Jinyao's chest and said, You haven't recovered from your cold yet. Aren't you afraid that I'll infect you? Hua Jinyao kissed her on the lips as if he was teasing her. Because of his playful attitude, Su Qing-sang couldn't help but bite his lips. This bite ignited the fire. Hua Jinyao picked her up and put her on his lap. Honey, if you really catch a cold because of me, then you can't blame me. As he spoke, he had already picked up Su Qing-sang and walked towards the bedroom. Su Qing-sang sat in the car, feeling a little flustered. This feeling came out of nowhere. She subconsciously raised her hand to cover her heart. What's wrong? Are you not feeling well? Hua Jinyao drove the car. The Hua family's old house was not far ahead. Su Qing-sang's expression suddenly changed. He sped up and drove into the Hua family's house. After parking the car, he turned around and looked at her with a worried face. Did I really infect you with a cold? No. Su Qing-sang shook her head gently. I don't know why, but I keep feeling flustered. Flustered? Yes. I just feel like something is going to happen. It was such a strange feeling. Su Qing-sang looked at Hua Jinyao and said, Do you think something will happen? What could happen? He had already driven Ding Qing away. Now all the people he could use were people he trusted. Hua Yifan had recently negotiated a good project. The contract was about to be signed, and he was almost in a position to do whatever he wanted in the company. His vice president seemed to be more powerful than Hua Jinyao. Hua Jinyao saw it but didn't say anything. Some things really depended on who could laugh in the end. As for other things, what else could there be? Su Qing-sang had just called Li Qianxue yesterday. The company was getting better. She didn't hear anything from Li Qianxue. Nothing. Maybe I'm thinking too much. Let's go. Let's get out of the car. As Su Qing-sang spoke, she reached out to push the car door open, and the two of them entered the house together. Not long after they entered the house, a Bugatti Veyron also drove in. That car was Hua Yifan's. Today the Hua family was all here. Hua Mingguang's family, Hua Mingliang's family, and Hua Mingmei's family were all here. Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao weren't the first to arrive. When they entered the house, Hua Mingmei's family was already sitting on the sofa in the living room. When she saw Su Qingsang, the corners of Hua Mingmei's mouth twitched, and an obvious look of disdain flashed across her eyes. However, she had been warned by old Master Hua recently, so her emotions flashed quickly and were almost invisible. Wei Siming and Wei Sihai wouldn't take the initiative to make friends with Su Qingsang. They were usually close to Hua Manzi. Speaking of which, they could be considered Hua Mingliang's group. Hua Mingliang and his wife, Nian Chuanya Hua Yang, and Hua Manzi sat on the other side. Su Qingsang glanced around and didn't see Hua Yifan, but she didn't care. The Hua family's gathering wasn't always full. She went up and greeted the elders one by one. When facing Lu Tongjia, Su Qingsang's expression was still indifferent. Lu Tongjia didn't like her, but she didn't always have to warm up to them. It was rare that Lu Tongjia was easy to talk to. She didn't say sarcastic words like the previous few times. However, Su Qingsang could feel that Lu Tongjia's expression was even more unpleasant. She seemed to have something on her mind. Her face was a little gloomy. Nian Chuanya had been talking to her, but she didn't seem to hear her. Hua Mingguang and Lu Tongjia were sitting together, but there was almost half an arm's length between them. This was also impossible in the past. Could it be that there was something wrong with the couple? She subconsciously glanced at Hua Jinyao. Hua Jinyao gave her a look, signaling her to leave it alone. Of course, Lu Tongjia didn't look good. After all, her plan had been ruined by him. Ding Qing had left, and Lu Tongjia didn't have anyone she could use. She had never wanted to be Wu Ziqian before, and she had never placed people in Tianyu group. If she only relied on Hua Mingguang, he would consider the big picture no matter what he wanted to do. Hua Jinyao didn't do much. He just asked someone to more or less tell Hua Mingguang about Xiaohong. It was true that Hua Mingguang doted on Lu Tongjia, and it was also true that he had feelings for Lu Tongjia. He didn't even stop Lu Tongjia from hurting Hua Jinyao. But it didn't mean that he would let Lu Tongjia do whatever she wanted. There were too many variables in selling the company's secrets, even if it was a lie. What if Xiaohong wasn't reliable? What if he took the company's secrets and went to a rival company? This time, Hua Mingguang didn't want to help Lu Tongjia. After throwing a tantrum in front of Lu Tongjia spent a lot of effort to pacify Lu Tongjia. However, Hua Mingguang obviously didn't intend to forgive her. The atmosphere between the couple was very low and everyone could see it. However, Hua Jinyao said not to interfere, so Su Qingsang didn't care. The two of them chose a seat near Old Master Hua and sat down. There was no one else sitting next to Old Master Hua. That seat had always been reserved for Hua Jinyao. He took Su Qingsang to sit next to him and the others were used to it. However, Hua Manzi couldn't hide the jealousy in her eyes. They were all children of the Hua family. Why did Old Master Hua only love Hua Jinyao? In terms of contributions to the company, her two brothers should have done a lot, right? Hua Jinyao was already used to those people's gazes. He talked to Old Master Hua and didn't care about the others. Su Qingsang sat next to him and occasionally said a few words. Then she heard Uncle Cheng say that the second young master was here. The second young master was Hua Yifan. He arrived later than usual. Su Qingsang didn't have a good impression of Hua Yifan, so she was sitting with her back to the door. Hearing Uncle Cheng's words, she politely turned her head to look behind her. "I'm sorry. I'm late." Hua Yifan apologized, but the expression on his face was one of pride. "I'm sorry. I should have come earlier, but today is a special day. I have someone to introduce to Grandpa, so I went to pick them up. I was delayed on the way. Grandpa, please don't take it to heart." He seemed to be holding someone's hand and walking inside. He was quite tall. The figure was blocked behind him. Su Qingsang didn't see the person's face at first glance. Chapter 556. Although the Hua family didn't value disciples, they valued rules. Old Master Hua didn't care who Hua Yifan brought back, but he had to inform him in advance. It was a good thing that his grandson had found a girlfriend and was willing to settle down. Old Master Hua was naturally happy. When he asked, he looked behind Hua Yifan. There was a hint of expectation in his eyes. Hua Yifan openly admitted that he was late. "Yes, I went to pick her up just now. Grandpa, this is my girlfriend." As he spoke, Hua Yifan took 2 steps inside. The figure he was holding took a few steps forward because of his movement and walked directly to his side from behind Hua Yifan. It also successfully let everyone see her face clearly. Su Qingsang didn't expect Hua Yifan to choose such a time to bring his girlfriend back to the Hua family. It seemed that he was serious. However, when she saw the face that suddenly appeared at the door, she was completely stunned. At the same time, Hua Yifan said softly to Old Master Hua, "Grandpa, this is Su Peijian. She's my girlfriend. Peijian, this is my grandpa." Su Peijian? How could it be Su Peijian? Su Qingsang couldn't hide the shock on her face. Hua Jinyao also had a flash of surprise in his eyes. Hua Jinyao narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at Su Peijian and Hua Yifan with a hint of playfulness in his eyes. Su Peijian took a few steps forward and stood in front of the Hua family. She didn't have stage fright at all. Like Hua Yifan, she looked at Old Master Hua and bowed. "Hello, Grandpa Hua." As she spoke, she took out a not-so-small box from behind her and placed it in front of Old Master Hua. "Grandpa Hua, I don't know what you like. Yifan suddenly said that he wanted to bring me to see you, and I didn't prepare anything. It's just a small gift. Grandpa Hua, I hope you don't mind." Su Peijian's appearance was delicate and pretty. Usually, elders wouldn't like such an appearance. However, before she came today, she deliberately tidied herself up. She was wearing a decent long-sleeve dress with a fragrant blazer on the outside. She looked much more mature, and her attitude was friendly and polite. Old Master Hua had a good impression of her. Good. It's good that he's here. Why is there a need for gifts? Although he said that, Old Master Hua did not refuse and accepted the gift from the other party. Of course. Su Peijian hooked her arm around Hua Yifan's. "I often hear Yifan mention you. He often says that the person he admires and respects the most is you, Grandpa. I'm so envious of him for having such a good grandfather." "Really?" Old Master Hua wasn't a person who liked to listen to flattery, but Su Peijian had a sweet tongue and used Hua Yifan to praise him, which made him smile a little more. "Of course it is. After hearing what Yifan said, I can't wait to see you, Grandpa Hua." Su Peijian nodded heavily. There was not a trace of arrogance on her face, not even a trace of the arrogance she had when she was with Hua Yifan. Her eyes were gentle and her voice was sweet. She looked like a well-bred lady from a respectable family. Seeing this, Hua Yifan, who had been a little worried before, completely relaxed. From the corner of his eye, he couldn't help but look in Hua Jinyao's direction. He wasn't the only one who had a taste for women. His taste was not worse than Hua Jinyao's. It wasn't that Hua Jinyao hadn't interacted with Su Peijian before. In the few times they had met, Su Peijian either had a high and mighty look on her face, or she looked flustered and exasperated because she failed to deal with them. Not to mention him, even Su Qingsang, who grew up with Su Peijian, had never seen her like this before. At this time she looked at her half-sister. No, she should be his younger sister now. She couldn't help but be speechless. What was Su Peijian trying to do? When Hua Yifan turned his face, he happened to see Hua Jinyao and Su Qingsang's shocked expressions. He felt a burst of pride in his heart, and he couldn't help but look a little smug. However, there were more important things in front of him. Hua Yifan didn't want to be entangled with these two couples that he disliked. "Peijian, come, let me introduce you to the other members of the Hua family." "Okay." Su Peijian nodded. The smile at the corner of her mouth suddenly changed when she saw Su Qingsang sitting next to Hua Jinyao. "Sister?" After saying this, she immediately covered her mouth, as if she realized that she had said something wrong. She suddenly looked at Hua Yifan helplessly. That "sister" wasn't a soft call. Moreover, no matter how big the living room was, the group of people sitting together naturally heard it clearly. "What did you call her?" Hua Yifan was stunned for a moment, and his somewhat suspicious gaze fell between Su Qingsang and Su Peijian. He seemed to have just realized that Su Peijian's surname was Su, and Su Qingsang's surname was also Su. His expression changed for a moment. Su Peijian seemed to be frightened. She looked at Su Qingsang and said, "I'm sorry, Miss Su. I shouldn't have called you sister." As she spoke, her body leaned against Hua Yifan's side without a trace, and her face seemed to be a little scared. Su Qingsang sat there without moving, just watching Su Peijian act there as if she was directing and acting herself. She had never seen Su Peijian act like this before. But now she had a rough idea of what Su Peijian was doing. Hua Jinyao sat next to Su Qingsang and reached out to gently pinch her palm. Su Qingsang glanced at him, and her fluctuating emotions strangely calmed down in an instant. No matter what Su Peijian wanted to do, she would just take it. "Peijian, what the hell is going on?" Hua Yifan narrowed his eyes. He looked at Su Qingsang and then at Su Peijian. Su Peijian's arrogance and domineering attitude from before, and her delicate side in front of Hua Yifan was like a little wife. Especially the way she looked at Su Qingsang, there was a hint of fear in her eyes. Su Qingsang didn't say anything and watched Su Peijian act. Her mood had calmed down and she was in the mood to watch her act. Really, she had never thought that Su Peijian had such acting skills before. It was a pity that she didn't enter the entertainment industry. Hua Jinyao and his wife weren't the only ones staring at Su Peijian, the others were also staring at her. Hua Mingmei narrowed her eyes as if she wanted to watch a good show. Lu Tongjia had been scolded by Hua Mingguang recently, and this made her feel even worse. She didn't like Su Qingsang, but she didn't like Su Peijian's attitude of not finishing her words. Su Peijian also knew that she couldn't keep people in suspense. Looking at Su Qingsang, she didn't hesitate and directly told the answer. Chapter 557. She's my sister. Su Peijian didn't look at Su Qingsang as she spoke. She bit her lip and looked hesitant. She seemed to be in a dilemma. Sister? The other members of the Hua family all pricked up their ears and stared at Su Peijian. Hua Manzi and Wei Siming looked at each other and looked at Su Qingsang as if they were watching a good show. She's your sister? The smile on old Master Hua's face faded a little. He knew about Su Qingsang's background. Someone who could call Su Qingsang's sister must be, she used to be my sister. Then she was my sister. But, Su Peijian bit her lip. She looked so wronged. She didn't look like the arrogant young lady of the Su family. She looked at Hua Yifan with an ambiguous look. Now, my sister probably doesn't want to acknowledge me. What she said was a little heart-wrenching. Su Qingsang sat there and didn't move. She didn't even make a sound. Hua Yifan looked at Su Qingsang and was a little surprised by her calmness. After thinking for a while, he suddenly spoke. What did you do? You made sister-in-law not acknowledge you? Su Peijian shook her head gently and didn't want to say more. I don't know what I did wrong. I only know that after my sister married President Hua, my parents acknowledged her and then kicked me out of the house. Su Peijian was telling the truth but not the whole truth. However, as soon as she finished speaking, everyone looked at Su Qingsang. They were all smart people and could understand what Su Peijian meant almost immediately. To put it bluntly, the Su family was just a greedy and snobbish family. However, this also showed one thing, and that was that Su Qingsang was very capable. Otherwise, why would they not even acknowledge their own daughter? Hua Mingmei looked at Su Qingsang. She knew that this woman was not simple. Hua Manzi and the other juniors looked at each other, and when they looked at Su Qingsang again, their expressions changed. It was really a black bottle of soy sauce. They couldn't tell. I remember that sister-in-law seems to be an illegitimate daughter, right? As an illegitimate daughter, she didn't acknowledge her own sister. Hua Yifan's eyes flickered, and the meaning in his eyes was unclear. Illegitimate daughter? Who is the illegitimate daughter now? Su Qingsang didn't want to argue. After all, her biological father swapped the identities of his two daughters in a fit of anger was not very honorable. She had never thought of revealing this matter. No matter what, Su Qinghui was her biological father. This sister-in-law is really amazing. Hua Yifan didn't dare to say anything. Others didn't dare to say it, but it didn't mean that he didn't dare to say it either. Why is her identity different after marrying Big Brother? The others didn't respond, but Hua Mingmei didn't care. She was an elder. Speaking of which, I was surprised last time. Then why did the Su family come personally to pay a visit? Wasn't it just marrying an illegitimate daughter? Such a grand ceremony is really... He didn't finish his sentence, but no one was a fool. They all understood what he meant. Just as Hua Jinyao was about to say something, Su Qingsang pressed the back of his hand. This was her business. She didn't need Hua Jinyao's endorsement. Peijian. Grandpa misses you very much. He kept talking about you on his last birthday. Unfortunately, you didn't go. She didn't say how Su Peijian left, nor did she say whether Su Peijian was kicked out. It was enough for him to say this. Sure enough, Su Peijian's expression suddenly changed. Speaking of leaving the Li family, if there was anything she couldn't bear to part with, it was old Master Li. She knew that the old man really loved her. She actually knew about old Master Li's last birthday. She also thought about whether she should go back to Lin City to visit old Master Li, even if it was just a phone call. But in the end, she couldn't pass her own test. She didn't want to return to the Li family in such a miserable way. To put it bluntly, she didn't want people's sympathy. Especially from the sympathy and charity from the Li family. Grandpa has always missed you. Su Qingsang's voice was calm. His last birthday wasn't a big party and he didn't invite many people. He just wanted to have a family dinner together. Su Qingsang sighed softly, and her expression seemed to be a little emotional. But it's a pity that the family didn't come together. His birthday wasn't a perfect one. These days she often contacted Li Chenxue and Su Yusin. Li Qianxue wouldn't take the initiative to mention Su Peijian in front of her, but Su Yusin had mentioned it a few times. More than 20 years of feelings couldn't be lost just because you said so. But Su Peijian could be so cold-hearted. Not only did she not visit, she didn't even call. How could Li Qianxue accept this? How could she not be disappointed? No matter how much she missed Su Peijian, she wouldn't take the initiative to contact her. First, Li Qianxue was an elder and Su Peijian was a junior. If Su Peijian really recognized the Li family, she would take the initiative to contact them. Second, she didn't want to hurt Su Qingsang's heart again. Third, she didn't want Su Qinghui to be complacent. She didn't want Su Qinghui to think that he still had the power to balance her. Putting these reasons together, Li Qianxue couldn't contact Su Peijian, but she also didn't want to refuse Su Peijian's return. Even if Su Peijian recognized Xiang Kaiping, as long as she was willing to return to the Li family, there would definitely be a place for her in the Li family. These were all slowly figured out by Su Qingsang later. Su Peijian wasn't stupid. Of course she could hear it. Feeling everyone's gaze on her, she lowered her head, her half-lidded eyes concealing all her emotions. I thought there was no place for me in the family. I also thought that Grandpa wouldn't want to see me. After all. At this time, Su Peijian's eyes were already red. Mom said that she didn't have a daughter like me. She said that her daughter was you. She looked up at Su Qingsang, still unable to hide the grievance in her eyes. Sister, I know you're better than me. You married President Hua, so you're the wife of the president of Tianyu Group. It's normal that Mom doesn't like me. Su Qingsang suddenly felt a little upset. What nonsense was Su Peijian talking about? Why didn't she say that the reason why Li Qianxue didn't recognize her was because of Su Qinghui? Now she was insisting that she couldn't refute it. After all, she didn't want to ruin Su Qinghui's reputation. Su Peijian looked at Su Qingsang and didn't say anything. A trace of pride flashed in the depths of her eyes, and she turned to look at Hua Yifan. I'm sorry, Yifan. I think that you might not want to see me. I'd better leave first. Su Qingsang hadn't even said a word, and she had already put such a big blame on her in one breath. Hua Jinyao watched Su Peijian put on a pitiful look in front of the other Hua family members, and then looked at Hua Yifan. At the beginning he was shocked, but now he looked serious on the surface, but deep in his eyes he looked like he was watching a good show. That was also true. He and Su Qingsang had a tacit understanding about Su Qinghui, so he naturally knew what Su Qingsang was worried about. Unfortunately, she had concerns, but he didn't. Don't you know why the Li family doesn't recognize you? Su Qingsang suddenly looked at Hua Jinyao, wanting to stop him. However, Hua Jinyao wouldn't let his wife be put in a difficult position without doing anything. Why doesn't the Su family recognize you? Su Peijian, don't you dare to say it now? Su Peijian had always known that her identity wouldn't be a secret. If she really wanted to investigate, she would find out. However, she thought that Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao didn't say it before because they had concerns. She didn't expect Hua Jinyao to ignore it. I don't know. She forced herself to calm down and looked at Hua Jinyao with her red eyes without blinking. I only know that ever since my sister married you, the Li family has been messed up by the two of you. I only know that because of you, my sister has confidence and courage. She also has the ability to make my parents kick me out of the family. There was no need to say the rest. Su Peijian had made it clear enough. She turned to look at Su Qingsang. I'm sorry, sister. I also know that you don't want to see me again. But Yifan and I, we can't help it. She turned to look at Hua Yifan with a pained expression. I'm sorry, Yifan. I know that you really want to marry me, so you brought me back to the Hua family to see your grandfather. But I lied to you. I'm actually not the eldest daughter of the Su family. I've been kicked out of the Su family. I'm just an abandoned daughter of the Su family now. Her eyes were red and filled with tears. The expression on her face was so aggrieved and pained. Hua Jinyao had never seen Su Peijian like this. He only felt that she was a completely different person from the beautiful woman who had sat on his lap. Even the way they talked was different. Su Peijian had never said that she was the eldest daughter of the Su family. When she appeared in front of him, her identity became a mystery. Hua Yifan had thought of investigating her, but he preferred to conquer her first. He enjoyed the feeling of conquering, and he was also confident that everything was under his control. So when Su Peijian said that, he almost immediately realized what was going on. Peijian, please don't say that. I believe that you didn't do it on purpose. Su Peijian's lips moved. She seemed to want to say something but stopped on second thought. Hua Yifan held her hand. It's not your fault that you were kicked out of the Su family. It's not your fault that they abandoned you. It's someone else's fault. There was no need to say who that someone else was. I like you as a person not because of your identity. I believe that Grandpa won't care about your identity. Grandpa, don't you think so? He turned to look at old Master Hua with a sincere expression. He stood in front of Su Peijian, looking as if he would go through thick and thin with her. He looked so sincere that even Su Peijian couldn't tell if he was serious or just acting. The other members of the Hua family couldn't tell. However, everyone was looking at the two of them. From time to time they would turn their eyes back to Hua Jingyao and his wife. Chapter 558. Others didn't know about Su Qingsang's family background, but old Master Hua did. Hua Jingyao had told him about it as soon as he came back. Su Qingsang didn't say it out loud because she wanted to save Su Qinghui's face. But this Su Peijian. Now that Su Qingsang had become the eldest daughter of the Su family, Su Peijian would naturally become an illegitimate daughter. He had no problem with illegitimate daughters, and he could understand Su Qinghui's behavior of exchanging two children in a fit of anger. But now that he saw Su Peijian, old Master Hua had a different opinion of the Su family. It doesn't matter if you recognize your biological daughter, but this isn't your biological daughter. No matter what, you have raised her by your side for so many years. There must be feelings, right? Why did he have feelings for her? How could he be chased out so easily? He didn't think that what the Su family did was necessarily wrong. After all, Su Qinghui had lied to her for so many years. It was normal for her to refuse to acknowledge her daughter. But it was still a little cold. Of course, Su Qingsang might have played a part in it. Just as Su Peijian had said, Su Qingsang married Hua Jingyao. Then Hua Jingyao would become Su Qingsang's backer. Perhaps it was because they had such a backer that the Su family was so heartless. Half of it was to please Su Qingsang, and the other half was because he disliked Su Qinghui. Old Master Hua remained silent. For the other few hours he naturally did not speak either. Hua Jingyao narrowed his eyes and glanced at Su Peijian. He had underestimated this woman. Su Peijian didn't mention that she was now an illegitimate daughter of the Su family. If he hadn't told his grandfather about it, he would have thought that the Su family was the kind of family that didn't recognize their own daughter in order to get on the Hua family's good side. What he didn't know was that although old Master Hua didn't think that way now, he more or less had some opinions about Su Qingsang and the Su family. So what if she was an illegitimate daughter? How many families in Rong City had illegitimate children? However, no one would raise an illegitimate daughter in their own home. If they really raised her by their side, then there was absolutely no reason to chase her out. Old Master Hua glanced at Hua Yifan. His voice was not as light as it had been when Su Peijian first came in. Feelings are your own business. I won't interfere with you. It's fine as long as you think it's good. This meant that he had no objections. Hua Jingyao glanced at old Master Hua. There was nothing wrong with his grandfather's attitude. If Hua Yifan wanted to be with someone, they were in no position to object. Hua Jingyao knew that, and so did Su Qingsang. However, neither of them were in a good mood. Especially Su Qingsang. Su Peijian never said the real reason why she was kicked out of the Li family. People who didn't know the truth might really think that it was because Hua Jingyao married her. Also, Su Peijian had been avoiding the question of her identity. She did not reveal her identity as an illegitimate daughter, only saying that she was a daughter who was chased out of the Su family. She wanted to clarify things with Su Peijian, but when she met old Master Hua's gaze, she couldn't bring herself to say anything else. Grandpa Hua didn't object to Su Peijian joining the Hua family, which meant that he accepted Su Peijian as a member of his family. If she opened her mouth now, she was afraid that the old man would be unhappy. She turned to look at Hua Jingyao. Hua Jingyao's expression was a little ugly. He looked at Su Peijian and was about to refute her words. Su Qingsang held his hand and gently shook her head at him. Some things needed to be fought for, but some things, there was no need. Since Su Peijian said that she was a daughter of the Su family, then she was a daughter of the Su family. If Su Peijian wanted to be with Hua Yifan, then let them be. Except for Su Peijian, no one else present saw Su Qingsang's action. Su Peijian lowered her head to hide the pride in her heart. She didn't need to do more today. She just needed to plant a seed in Su Qingsang's mind, a seed of doubt. As for the rest, she would leave it to time. Now her show wasn't over yet. Nian Chuanya and Hua Mingliang were Hua Yifan's parents, but now Grandpa Hua didn't object. Naturally, they couldn't say anything. Nian Chuanya didn't come from a rich family, so she always liked to compare herself to Lu Tongjia. In the past years, she had been suppressed by Lu Tongjia. When people talked about the Hua family's madam, very few people mentioned Nian Chuanya, but everyone knew Lu Tongjia. Of course, it was also because of her husband. After all, Hua Mingliang was not as capable as his brother. He was only a director in Tianyu Group, but he had always been doing nothing. Lu Tongjia was indeed a scheming person. She had fought with Lu Tongjia several times, both openly and secretly, but she had always been defeated. She was holding back her anger in her heart. She was thinking about how to suppress Lu Tongjia. However, Lu Tongjia was stronger than her in every aspect. When it came to children, she gave birth to 3 children, and so did Lu Tongjia. She had 2 boys and 1 girl, and Lu Tongjia had 2 boys and 1 girl. To be honest, when the incident happened, she felt a little lucky. She felt lucky that Hua Jinkai died early. Otherwise, Hua Jinkai would be much more favored than the 2 of them. Of course, Nian Chuanya never dared to show such thoughts in front of the other members of the Hua family. Especially after Old Master Hua explicitly forbade them from mentioning Hua Jinkai and his sister, it became a taboo in the Hua family. They couldn't mention it again. Hua Yifan was only 2 years older than Hua Jinyao. She had thought it was better. Hua Jinyao was not a serious person. He liked to play around. She could see that when he was young. With Hua Jinkai gone, Hua Yifan would have a chance. However, after Hua Jinkai left, Hua Jinyao seemed to have changed into a different person. He skipped a grade, went abroad to study, and took over the company. Old Master Hua was full of praises for him. He had suppressed Hua Yifan and his sister. Lu Tongjia only had 1 son left. Speaking of which, there was nothing to be proud of at all. However, he had risen to the top and gained Old Master Hua's favor. Don't you think that Old Master Hua is biased? Now, Su Qingsang's parents kicked her sister out just because she married Hua Jinyao. What did that mean? Hua Jinyao had his ways. Su Peijian was not so good. Her silly son had thrown away someone who didn't want him. Thinking of this, Nian Chuanya's face darkened. When Su Peijian came over to greet them, her expression was indifferent, and it was obvious that she was unhappy. Su Peijian didn't mind being treated coldly. She still greeted Hua Mingliang and Nian Chuanya with the same attitude. Then Hua Mingguang and Lu Tongjia, then Hua Mingmei and Wei Nantian, and then the younger members of the family. In terms of etiquette, Su Peijian, who had been carefully trained by Li Qianxue, was absolutely impeccable. When Lu Tongjia saw Su Peijian earlier, she didn't think much of her. But after watching the good show just now, she finally understood what was going on. Chapter 559. Su Qingsang and Su Peijian didn't look like sisters. They looked more like enemies. Lu Tongjia looked at Su Qingsang and then at Su Peijian. For the first time, she looked at Su Peijian seriously. Before Su Peijian came, she had asked Hua Yifan about the Hua family. Hua Yifan also told her about Hua Mingguang and his wife, Hua Mingliang and his wife, and Hua Mingmei's family. However, Hua Yifan didn't have time to tell her that Lu Tongjia didn't like Hua Jinyao and Su Qingsang. However, she had been observing Lu Tongjia and Su Qingsang since she came in. After observing for so long, she could basically make a judgment. If Nian Chuanya didn't like her, then Lu Tongjia didn't like Su Qingsang either. Su Peijian finally had a smile on her face since she came to the Hua family. Su Qingsang, do you really think it's so easy to be the daughter-in-law of a rich family? You're really too naive. The elders didn't show it on their faces, but the younger generation had different thoughts. The routine dinner party began in such a strange atmosphere. Su Peijian knew that the real person in the family was Old Master Hua. Therefore, after sitting down, she didn't mention her family background. She only picked some interesting things to get close to Old Master Hua. Old Master Hua still had some sympathy for Su Peijian. It was true that he liked Su Qingsang, but that didn't stop him from sympathizing with Su Peijian. The roles had been reversed. She was originally the daughter of a rich family, but now she had become an illegitimate daughter. Not everyone could bear this kind of disparity. Su Peijian showed a little dissatisfaction at the beginning, and then didn't mention it again. In Old Master Hua's eyes, it was a sign of her true nature. After all, it was impossible to say that she didn't care at all after such a thing happened. However, it wasn't appropriate to keep harping on the past. It was just right like this. Hua Yifan had been paying attention to Old Master Hua's expression. He was surprised and proud that Su Peijian could please Old Master Hua. See, Hua Jinyao wasn't the only one who knew how to pick women. He knew how to pick women too. Nian Chuanya didn't like Su Peijian at first, but seeing that she could please Old Master Hua, she stopped looking down on Su Peijian. Hua Yang knew what had happened to Su Peijian in the past. This woman's current behavior was completely different from before, and he was greatly impressed. I didn't expect my brother's taste to be so good. She found Su Qingsang's sister as soon as she started searching. The meal was especially quiet. Silence referred to the others. Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao were also watching Su Peijian's performance. Su Peijian had been with old Master Li since she was a child. If she wanted to please an elder, it would be a piece of cake for her. In the beginning, old Master Hua only felt pity for her, but after the meal, it became 60%. It was getting late by the time they finished eating. Su Peijian was not in a hurry to leave. Instead, she said that she wanted to play chess with old Master Hua. When I was at home, I often played with my grandfather. Su Qingsang sat next to Hua Jinyao and watched Su Peijian play chess with old Master Hua. The two of them went back and forth. Her chess skills were not bad. After a while, old Master Hua became serious. His love for Su Peijian had become 80%. Su Qingsang watched as old Master Hua changed his attitude towards Su Peijian in a short period of time. She was not jealous, but she remembered something. Li Qianxue truly loved Su Peijian. Although she spoiled and spoiled her, she had also raised her according to the standards of a lady from a wealthy family. The four arts, chess, calligraphy and painting, as well as the ways of the world. Those were things that she had missed and could not make up for. Li Qianxue's painstaking efforts over the past 20 years had been exchanged for Su Peijian. But now, Su Peijian. She had mixed feelings until she left the Hua family and got into Hua Jinyao's car. Are you unhappy? Hua Jinyao had noticed that Su Qingsang's expression was not good. Do you not want Su Peijian to enter the Hua family? Su Peijian was in the limelight today. In the previous game of chess, she lost the first game, drew the second game, and actually beat old Master Hua in the third game. In recent years, there were not many people who could beat old Master Hua. Su Peijian actually won, which undoubtedly greatly improved her impression in front of old Master Hua. Qingsang, don't worry. Even if she really gets together with Hua Yifan, it won't affect anything. Compared to Hua Yifan, he was old Master Hua's most beloved eldest grandson. With him around, Hua Yifan couldn't beat him, so naturally, Su Peijian couldn't beat Su Qingsang either. Moreover, it was her first day at home, so old Master Hua had to give her and Hua Yifan some face. I'm not worried about that. Su Qingsang shook her head. Although Grandpa can go to his old friends and granduncle when he has nothing to do, he still likes the younger generation to come back to see him often. I'm happy for Grandpa that Su Peijian can win Grandpa's favor. But today there are some things that can't be argued over in one day. I know her purpose. She just wants to ruin my reputation. She hates my father now. I can't just ignore it and ruin my father's reputation. What makes me uncomfortable is her attitude towards Grandpa and my mother. The better Su Peijian behaved, the more it showed how much effort Li Qianxue had put in to nurture her. There were many things that she could see with her own eyes. She used to envy Su Peijian for being raised by Li Qianxue. If Su Peijian didn't have Li Qianxue and Su Qinghue's wholehearted training, she wouldn't have become what she was now, and she wouldn't have been able to win old Master Hua's favor so easily. But all of that came from the Li family. However, she could completely cast aside the Li family after finding out about her family background. My mother raised her for more than 20 years. Even if my mother was angry at Su Qinghui, she still cared about her reputation. She didn't make her background public. My mother always cared about her mother-daughter relationship with Su Peijian. But Su Peijian obviously didn't. That was also why she didn't argue with Su Peijian today. Speaking of which, both Li Qianxue and Su Qinghui still had feelings for Su Peijian. If she went too far, it would only hurt the elders' hearts in the end. More importantly, she didn't want to hurt Xiang Caiping's heart. You're too kind. Hua Jinyao didn't agree with Su Qingsang's idea. This was her decision and he couldn't oppose it. I don't believe you don't know that she deliberately picked Hua Yifan to target you. I know. How could Su Qingsang not know? I won't do anything before she takes the initiative. Hua Jinyao didn't agree. He had wanted to see what Su Peijian was doing before, but he thought that she was still in Lin City, so he didn't investigate. Now that she was in Rong City, and it was obvious that she was targeting Su Qingsang, there was no reason for him not to make a move. I only know that the first to strike has the upper hand. Mom won't agree. Su Qingsang glanced at Hua Jinyao. My parents still have feelings for Su Peijian. What's more, there's Aunt Xiang. Hua Jinyao didn't need to say the rest. He looked at Su Qingsang and reached out to gently hug her. Don't worry, I won't let her hurt you. Don't worry, I won't let her hurt me. I won't give her the chance. Hua Jinyao nodded, but he had made up his mind. He would find a chance to tell Yang Wenchang to have someone keep an eye on Su Peijian. He always felt that Su Peijian had a trick up her sleeve. Especially now that she was in cahoots with Hua Yifan, she was most likely up to no good. He wasn't worried that old Master Hua would favor them, Nor was he worried that Su Peijian and Hui Yifan would really marry and enter the Hua family. He was worried that Su Peijian had ulterior motives. Getting close to Hui Yifan and entering the Hua family would undoubtedly give her more opportunities to get close to Su Qingsang. There would be more things she could do in the future. And Hui Jinyao didn't want to see that situation. After Hui Yifan left the Hua family, he didn't listen to Su Peijian and send her home. Instead, he parked the car in front of his apartment. Su Peijian sat in the car and didn't plan to get out. What is Hui Xiao trying to do? Hui Yifan narrowed his eyes and looked at her. He didn't speak, nor did he get out of the car. Su Peijian had just played a few games of chess with old Master Hua, and Su Qingsang left before them. She chatted with Hui Yifan for a while. After she made old Master Hua happy, she left the Hua family. Hui Yifan's apartment was in the opposite direction of Xiang Caiping's villa. Sitting in the car, she saw Hui Yifan's expression and couldn't help but laugh. She didn't have the gentle concern she had when she was facing old Master Hua. Instead, she looked as innocent as a white rabbit. She moved slightly closer to Hui Yifan, tilted her face, and flipped her slightly curled long hair to the side. President Hua, are you not satisfied with my performance today? How could that be? Hui Yifan took the opportunity to put his arm around Su Peijian's waist and stared at her face. I'm satisfied. I'm very satisfied. Why can't I see that? Hui Yifan stared at Su Peijian's face and bit down on her lip, neither too lightly nor too heavily. You used me today. Did you have a good time? I don't quite understand what Hui Xiao is saying. How is it using me? The lights in the car were dim. Su Peijian bit her lips. Her scarlet lips looked especially charming in this kind of night. You didn't tell me before that you are Su Qingsang's sister. Well, you didn't ask me. Su Peijian raised her eyebrows and smiled faintly. Besides, aren't you using me too? She was referring to the time when he used her to please old Master Hua. If they were really talking about using each other, they were about the same. Neither of them could blame the other. Woman, you've pissed me off. It was true that he wanted to take her home to meet old Master Hua, but that was because he didn't know her identity, and he didn't know that she had deliberately approached him. Chapter 560. He didn't know that she was Su Qingsang's sister, that she was the daughter of the Su family, and that she had been kicked out of the Su family. Of course, he didn't care about that identity, but the Su family had kicked Su Peijian out to please Su Qingsang. He felt a little uncomfortable when he compared himself to her. Mr. Hua, you're wrongly accusing me. I remember I asked you before, didn't I? I asked you if you dared to meet my parents with me. You said you dared. Hui Yifan narrowed his eyes and stared at Su Peijian's face. Did you approach me on purpose for Su Qingsang? Didn't you also use me on purpose for Hui Jinyao? Su Peijian's counterattack made Hui Yifan feel a little suffocated. Woman, I don't like to be used. If you're used, it means that you're still valuable. What's more, Su Peijian put her hand on Hui Yifan's chest. We're not just using you. We're using each other. Isn't that right? Hui Yifan didn't speak. He felt a little uncomfortable. Su Peijian changed the topic at that moment. Your aunt doesn't seem to like my sister, does she? Hui Yifan looked at her with a cunning look in his eyes. What do you want to do? Mr. Hua, you should ask what we want to do. Su Peijian approached Hui Yifan with a smile. Her red lips opened and closed, but the words she said were full of calculation. You don't like Hui Jinyao and I don't like Su Qingsang. Do you know Hui Jinyao's weakness? It's Su Qingsang. If Su Qingsang had anything, would Hui Jinyao still have the mood to fight with you? Would he still have the mood to sit as the president of Tianyu Group? She didn't need to say the rest. Hui Yifan was a smart man, so he naturally understood what she meant. Looking at the smugness in her eyes, he suddenly tightened his hand on her waist. Has anyone ever told you that you're a bad woman? No, you're the first. Su Peijian smiled and put her arms around his neck. Has anyone ever told you that you're a bad man? I don't think so. As Su Peijian said this, she kissed him on the lips. So, the two of us, bad men and bad women, just happened to be a match made in heaven. Just as she was about to step back, Hui Yifan grabbed her waist. He trapped her in his arms again. A pair made in heaven? Isn't it? Yes. Hui Yifan didn't finish his sentence. Instead, he kissed Su Peijian's lips savagely. Only when Su Peijian was out of breath did he pull back slightly, but he didn't let go. Since we are a match made in heaven, let us bring disaster to the world together. Sure. Su Peijian's lips curled into a smile. I like this word. Is that so? Then let's make a little. Something you like better. Hui Yifan got out of the car as he spoke. He walked to the other side of the car door and carried Su Peijian out. Su Peijian didn't flinch this time. She let him carry her upstairs. That night, Su Peijian didn't go home. Is the work in the hospital too tiring recently? Why do I see that you don't look so good? Li Qianxue, who was video chatting with Su Qingsang, noticed the dark circles under Su Qingsang's eyes. Oh, maybe I didn't sleep well last night. Su Peijian suddenly showed up yesterday. Su Qingsang wasn't afraid of her. She was just wondering if she should tell Li Qianxue and Su Qinghui about it. Like Hu Jinyao, she didn't think that Su Peijian was harmless. She suddenly showed up with Hu Yifan. She must have a purpose. The most likely reason was that she was here for her. However, she didn't know what Su Peijian wanted to do. Yesterday? Li Qianxue counted the days. She knew that Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao went to the Hu mansion every weekend. Did Hu Jinyao's mother make things difficult for you again? No. What are you talking about, Mom? Lu Tongjia had been very quiet yesterday. She was a little confused by Lu Tongjia's quiet behavior. Lu Tongjia was so quiet that it wasn't like her at all. Her mother isn't that kind of unreasonable person. At most she would just ignore me. It's better if she doesn't talk to you. You don't talk to her either. Li Qianxue couldn't bear to see her daughter being bullied, especially when she thought of Lu Tongjia's face. She had just recognized her daughter and she hadn't loved her enough yet. Why were Lu Tongjia's eyes and nose not her nose? Mom, why are you like a child? Li Qianxue was a little embarrassed. She lowered her head and didn't say anything. She had been a little grumpy recently. After all, it was that bastard Su Qinghui's fault. Even if they were divorced, so be it. Everything was fine, but now he was acting like he regretted it in front of her and pretending that he still had feelings for her. He didn't find it annoying, but she found it annoying. The key was that she didn't know where he learned to be so thick-skinned. He always used Su Yusin's name to come to her. She hated that her daughter wasn't by her side, but she still had to worry about her son. Su Qinghui thought that he could enter the house, but he didn't know that because of his actions, Li Qianxue now hated him more and more. Li Qianxue naturally wouldn't say these things in front of Su Qingsang. I'm just anxious and worried for you. You see, you're alone over there and I can't help you much. If anything happens, you still have to rely on yourself. I'm feeling wronged for you. Mom? I'm not wronged. Su Qingsang really didn't feel wronged. Lu Tongjia's expression was ugly. Speaking of it, it was not much different from how Li Qianxue treated her back then. And the relatives of the Li family. Sometimes she felt lucky that she had been through the lowest point of her life. Lu Tongjia's words didn't affect her at all. To be honest, she was more worried about Hu Jinyao. In fact, as long as Hu Jinyao is good to me, the two of us can live our own lives. Even if there was a lot of trouble in the Hu family, as long as Hu Jinyao was with her, she would feel that nothing mattered. Li Qianxue naturally knew this, but she said, Qingsang, it's really not that I'm trying to persuade you. You're not old, but you're not young either. I don't mean anything else, and I'm not urging you to have children. I just think that if you have children, maybe the Hua family will change their attitude for the sake of their grandson. What do you think? To be honest, Li Qianxue actually didn't want Su Qingsang to have children under such circumstances. What would happen then? Would Su Qingsang rely on having children to stabilize her position? Would she rely on having children to improve the relationship between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law? As soon as Li Qianxue thought of this, she felt wronged for Su Qingsang. However, she also knew that this was the simplest and most direct way. Give birth to the fourth generation of the Hua family, whether it was Hua Mingguang or Lu Tongjia. For the sake of the children, they would definitely not make things difficult for Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang was stunned for a moment. She thought of Hu Jinyao's attitude on this matter several times. Mom, I'm still young. There's no rush. Li Qianxue wanted to persuade her again, but in the end she still felt sorry for her daughter and stopped talking about children. After ending the call, Su Qingsang put her phone aside and looked at the half-empty bed. She knew that what Li Qianxue said made sense. Although it wasn't the best solution, it was indeed the easiest step to solve the bad relationship between Hu Jinyao and Lu Tongjia. However, this matter had never been decided by her alone. In fact, since last time, she had vaguely felt that Hu Jinyao probably didn't want to have children. She could tell from the fact that even when he was in a trance, he didn't forget to take contraceptives. Hu Jinyao didn't want children. At first, she had always thought that he was so careful about contraceptives because she didn't want to have children. However, slowly as time passed, especially when she explicitly hinted several times. However, when Hu Jinyao pretended that he didn't understand, she realized. She didn't understand why before, but after seeing what Lu Tongjia had done, She was afraid that the knot in Hua Jinyao's heart was still because of Lu Tongjia. If she could solve the knot between Lu Tongjia and Hua Jinyao, didn't that mean that this matter was half resolved? Su Qingsang thought of it and did it. Hua Jinyao had something to do today. She could use this time to ask Old Master Hua again. An hour later, Su Qingsang stood in the living room of the Hua family's old house. Uncle Cheng was a little surprised to see her. Yesterday Hua Jinyao didn't stay in the old house. He only said that he had an international meeting this morning and left with Su Qingsang. He didn't expect that Su Qingsang would come again today. Young mistress, you're back? Yes. Su Qingsang nodded. I'm looking for Grandpa. Where is he? Grandpa is playing with the parrot in the back. Thinking of this, Uncle Cheng smiled. Grandpa likes that parrot very much. He plays with it when he has nothing to do. The parrot is quarreling in front of others, but it has a lot to say to Grandpa. Then I'll go to the backyard to find Grandpa. After saying that, Su Qingsang walked to the back. Uncle Cheng wanted to say that there were guests in the backyard, but Su Qingsang walked so fast that he didn't have time to say it. Before Su Qingsang reached the yard, she heard Old Master Hua's voice. She thought that he was chatting with the parrot, so she didn't think much and walked straight up. Grandpa Yuan, when he saw the person standing next to Old Master Hua, he swallowed his words and nodded at that person. Uncle. Zhang Yichen looked at Su Qingsang. The temperature in Rong City had risen a lot. It was the end of spring. Even though it wasn't warm, the temperature had begun to rise. Su Qingsang was wearing a red long-sleeve dress today. Su Qingsang's facial features were actually pretty and elegant. However, the red dress suited her very well. It made her look more lively than usual. Especially when she tied her long hair into a ponytail, she looked much more youthful. Zhang Yichen's eyes darkened. Instead of greeting Su Qingsang, he nodded coldly. Chapter 561. Grandpa. Zhang Yichen was there, so Su Qingsang couldn't ask what she wanted to ask. Can't I come to see you if I'm free? Yes, of course. Old Master Hua smiled and said, if you don't come to accompany me, I can only talk to the parrot. You came just in time. I have a companion now. Grandpa, don't you have uncle to accompany you? Su Qingsang wasn't surprised to see Zhang Yichen in the Hua mansion. Speaking of which, he really cared about the old master. Whenever he came to Rong City, he would come to accompany the old master. Zhang Yichen had helped him last time. She had told Hua Jinyao that she would treat Zhang Yichen to dinner, but they hadn't been able to see him since he returned to the army. Yes, Yichen is a good boy. Old Master Hua liked Zhang Yichen very much. He also had the heart to visit her whenever he came to Lin City. Su Qingsang didn't know how to respond. He was older than her, so she just smiled at him. Uncle Cheng suddenly appeared at the door and called out. Old Master, it's Second Master Hua. The second master that Uncle Cheng was talking about was naturally Hua Yangyuan. Hearing that, Old Master Hua glanced at Su Qingsang and said, you talk to your uncle for a while. I need to take a call. He left in such a hurry that he forgot that Zhang Yichen was about the same age as Hua Jinyao. Su Qingsang was stunned. She didn't understand Old Master Hua's sudden proposal. He glanced at Zhang Yichen. The parrot, which was not noisy a moment ago, was now silent. Zhang Yichen stood there and looked at her. Su Qingsang felt a little embarrassed when she met his eyes. Thank you for last time. She was referring to the incident at the hospital. If Zhang Yichen hadn't shown up in time, she and Hua Jinyao wouldn't have been able to solve the problem. She would have suffered some losses as well. You're welcome. Zhang Yichen turned his face away on purpose. It's nothing. It's a small matter to you, but it's not a small matter to me. Su Qingsang smiled. The gratitude in her eyes was very sincere. Last time, I told Jinyao that I would pick a time to treat you to dinner. You're welcome. It really isn't a big deal. Of course. Su Qingsang wasn't an ungrateful person. How long are you going to stay in Rong City? Otherwise, Jinyao and I will be the host. Zhang Yichen finally turned around to look at her. Her eyes were clear and filled with pure gratitude. Also, the way she looked at him was as if she was looking at an elder. He knew this very well, but he could not hide the bitterness in the depths of his heart. I don't like to eat out. What Zhang Yichen said made Su Qingsang look at him with confusion. Last time at your house, Zhang Yichen added, your aunt was a good cook. Then let's do it at home. Ms. Yu's cooking was really good, so Su Qingsang didn't think too much about it. She was thinking of a time that would be convenient for everyone. Uncle, let's see if you're free these few days. You can also tell me what you like to eat. I'll go buy some groceries. Su Qing-sang wanted to ask Ms. Yu to buy the groceries. However, she was going to thank him anyway, so it would be more sincere if she said that she was going to buy groceries. I'll have to trouble you then. How is it troublesome? I'm the one who's troubling you. Zhang Yichen looked at her. She seemed to want to cut all ties with him as if they had never known each other. It made him feel a little uncomfortable. He turned around, not looking at her but at the parrot. Surprisingly, the parrot didn't speak. Su Qing-sang didn't think too much about it. She took 2 steps forward and stood in front of the parrot. I Jade. The parrot arrogantly turned its head, completely ignoring Su Qing-sang. Su Qing-sang was a little embarrassed. The last time she came here, the parrot had argued with her. Zhang Yichen was still here, but the parrot didn't give her any face. Zhang Yichen glanced at her and took a step to her side. He didn't say anything. He just stared at the parrot. At first, the parrot looked at Zhang Yichen, but the moment it saw Zhang Yichen raise his hand, the parrot screamed. I'm killing a bird. Help. Bird killing. Help. Su Qing-sang was waiting for the parrot to say something, but she didn't expect it to say something like that. She was completely unprepared, so she laughed. That parrot was so funny, wasn't it? Who was going to kill her? She smiled brightly and her eyes were curved. Zhang Yichen was standing next to her. From this angle, he only felt that her smile was so bright and beautiful, so attractive. Zhang Yichen lowered his eyes and restrained all his emotions. Su Qing-sang also realized at that moment that she seemed to have forgotten herself. She turned around and looked at Zhang Yichen awkwardly. Uncle, I'm sorry. Zhang Yichen didn't say anything. He didn't know what to say at that moment. Before, when he didn't know Su Qing-sang's identity, he didn't feel uncomfortable in front of her. However, ever since he found out her identity, he had a feeling that if he spoke to her more, he would bring trouble to her. His attitude was naturally different from when they first met. However, Su Qing-sang now saw him as an elder, so she didn't think there was anything wrong with it. If Zhang Yichen behaved like he did when they first met, she would be afraid. She realized that it wasn't appropriate for her to stand with Zhang Yichen like this. She also remembered that there were guests here today, so she probably wouldn't be able to get anything out of him. Su Qing-sang had to give up today. She would ask old Master Hua when she had the chance. Uncle, I have something to do, so I have to go. Help yourself. After saying goodbye to Zhang Yichen, Su Qing-sang was about to leave. Zhang Yichen didn't stop her, but after Su Qing-sang took 2 steps, he suddenly said, I will still be in Rong City tomorrow and the day after. Su Qing-sang was stunned for a moment and turned around to look at him. For a moment she didn't understand what Zhang Yichen meant. When she met Zhang Yichen's eyes, she seemed to suddenly understand. Then tomorrow. Tomorrow is Sunday, so Jinyao's company shouldn't be that busy. Okay. Zhang Yichen nodded. I will come over tomorrow night. Then it's a deal. After saying that, Su Qing-sang nodded slightly and was about to leave. At that moment, the parrot behind her spoke again. Come over tomorrow. Come over tomorrow. Come over tomorrow. It was so loud that Su Qing-sang almost got scared. She turned around and stared at the parrot. Come over tomorrow. I will come over tomorrow. The parrot was still calling. Su Qing-sang felt embarrassed. She couldn't help but take a step forward. Stop calling. Shut up. However, the parrot wasn't afraid of her at all. It called a few more times. Zhang Yichen took a step forward again and glared at the parrot. His glare was much more intimidating. The parrot immediately stopped talking. It even took a few steps back as if it was afraid of Zhang Yichen. Su Qing-sang couldn't help but laugh when she saw the look in Zhang Yichen's eyes. Thank you, uncle. She bowed and was about to leave. The moment she turned around, her ponytail got stuck in the button of Zhang Yichen's shirt. Su Qing-sang's scalp tightened. She gasped. The pain stopped her in her tracks. Just now, she felt that the situation was a little awkward, so she turned around a little too quickly. She didn't expect something like this to happen. She took a step forward. Her scalp tightened again. Don't move. The man's deep voice rang out. She didn't move. Your hair got stuck in my button. Zhang Yichen took a step forward and explained in a low voice. Su Qing-sang was about to say something. However, Zhang Yichen stopped her before she could. Don't move. I'll untie it for you. Her hair was stuck in his button. If she turned around, the two of them would be too intimate. Su Qing-sang realized it and didn't insist. It was a little awkward to stand there. Thank you, uncle. Su Qing-sang thanked him in a low voice. Feeling that Zhang Yichen was standing closer, he raised his hand and gently pushed her hair away. Su Qing-sang didn't dare to move at all. The situation was a little awkward. She was a little embarrassed. She felt that every time she met Zhang Yichen she would easily get into trouble. She waited for about 30 seconds. There was no sound behind her. She couldn't help but ask, "Are you done?" In Zhang Yichen's hand was the strand of hair that Su Qingsang had gotten stuck in his button. The faint fragrance smelled a little familiar. He remembered the smell. He had smelled it after Su Qingsang took a bath. "Uncle, are you done?" Su Qingsang waited for a long time. She couldn't help but ask again. "Yes." Zhang Yichen let go of her hair and took a step back. His well-trained body straightened up. "Thank you, uncle." Su Qingsang took a step back and looked down at Zhang Yichen. "I'm leaving. See you tomorrow, uncle." "See you tomorrow." Zhang Yichen looked into her eyes. "I'll be there on time." "Then I'm leaving." Su Qingsang was really embarrassed. She had been so impolite in front of an elder several times. It was really embarrassing. She left, and the faint fragrance in the air once again disappeared without a trace. Zhang Yichen closed his eyes and turned his head sideways. He tried hard to smell the remaining fragrance in the air, but he quickly came to his senses. He raised his head and looked in a certain direction. It was the place where he felt someone was watching him last time. He narrowed his eyes and walked quickly to the place where he felt someone was standing. He looked around but didn't see anyone. He looked in the direction of the main house again. He knew that the elders of the Hua family were not at home today except for old Master Hua. Not everyone was free on the weekends. On the contrary, because of their identities, Hua Mingguang and Lu Tongjiao were not at home on weekends. So who was standing here just now? Yichen. Old Master Hua had answered the phone and came out again. It was a nice day. He usually liked to play with the parrot here. "Uncle." Zhang Yichen walked up. Old Master Hua glanced at him and said, "Why are you over there? It's not time yet. There's nothing good to see in the garden right now. You'll have to come back later to see something good." "No, I'm just looking around." Chapter 562. Old Master Hua didn't notice that something was wrong with Zhang Yichen. He just pointed at Lian Dian with his mouth. "If you want to see the flowers, go to the greenhouse over there." That greenhouse was built by the old woman. She passed away later. Lu Tongjia loved flowers and plants, so she built a lot of them. There were more varieties in the greenhouse than when the old woman was there, and they were more delicate. Many of them were expensive. Speaking of which, Lu Tongjia didn't have any faults other than being too stubborn when it came to Hua Jinyao. "Well, since you're here, let's have dinner together." I was going to ask Qingsang to stay, but she said she had something to do and left. Old Master Hua couldn't help but look at Zhang Yichen. "Yichen, you won't dislike an old man like me, right?" "Of course not." Zhang Yichen looked down with a gentle expression. He remembered that Su Qingsang seemed to have something to say to old Master Hua when she came in. She wasn't in trouble again, was she? For some reason he felt a little sorry for her. She seemed to be having a hard time after marrying Hua Jinyao. Zhang Yichen tried hard to suppress his concern for Su Qingsang, but he couldn't help it at the last moment. It wasn't a good thing, not for her, not for him. Zhang Yichen pressed his lips into a straight line. When he met old Master Hua's eyes again, he had already suppressed his emotions. In the CEO's office of Tianyu Group. It was Sunday, so there was no one in the building. In the CEO's office on the top floor, Hua Jinyao and Yang Wenchang still had work to do. Hua Jinyao looked at the things he had arranged. Everything was going according to plan. He was quite satisfied with Yang Wenchang's work ability. However, "You mean Su Peijian came to Rong City right after we did?" After leaving the Hua family the day before yesterday, he asked Yang Wenchang to investigate Su Peijian's movements in the past few months. Su Peijian's activities were easy to find. In fact, she didn't try to hide anything. Hua Jinyao knew that she had taken over Xiang Caiping's supermarket chain and was now the general manager. However, she had hooked up with Hua Yifan in the past month or so. The night they left the Hua mansion, Su Peijian followed Hua Yifan to his house. Yes. It was easy to find out when Su Peijian came to Rong City. Not long after Su Peijian and Xiang Caiping met, she came to Rong City. After that, she kept in contact with all the major suppliers. One of the suppliers, whose surname was He, had worked with Tianyu Group before. Therefore, through him, Su Peijian met an employee of the Tianyu Group. Then, through that employee, she finally managed to get in touch with Hua Yifan. Her methods are not bad. Hua Jinyao sneered, but his voice was not full of praise. Who would believe that Su Peijian didn't have an ulterior motive? President Hua, next, keep an eye on her and see who else she interacts with other than Hua Yifan. Yes. Yang Wenchang nodded and thought of another person. What about Vice President Hui Yifan? Don't worry about him. Hu Jiniao sneered. He's in cahoots with Su Peijian. If you keep an eye on Su Peijian, you'll be keeping an eye on Hui Yifan. After giving his orders, Hu Jiniao decided to go home. It was a good weekend. If it weren't for the fact that he didn't want to talk about the company at home and cause Su Qingsang to misunderstand, he would rather stay at home. After leaving the company, Hu Jiniao drove home. When he passed by a flower shop, he suddenly remembered something. Because Su Qingsang and Li Qianxue had recognized each other, they had spent the new year in Lin City. And the new year was very close to Valentine's Day. He hadn't sent Su Qingsang flowers yet. He stopped the car and bought Su Qingsang a large bouquet of roses. When Hu Jiniao entered the house with the roses, he didn't expect to see someone in the living room who shouldn't have been there. Uncle? Why was he here? Hu Jiniao's eyes flashed with surprise. Su Qingsang, who was in the kitchen, heard the sound and walked out. The first thing she saw was the large bouquet of roses in Hu Jiniao's hands. You're back? Su Qingsang didn't get an answer yesterday, but she wasn't very disappointed. These were all things that she had expected. However, she still felt a little regretful. She wanted to resolve the conflict between Hu Jiniao and Lu Tongjia as soon as possible. If it could be resolved, it would be a good thing for them to get back together. But it didn't seem that easy at all. Su Qingsang had something on her mind, so she forgot about Zhang Yichen's visit yesterday. It wasn't until this morning that Zhang Yichen arrived, not long after Mizu bought the groceries. She remembered that Zhang Yichen said he would come over for dinner yesterday. This was embarrassing. Not only did she forget to tell Hu Jiniao that Zhang Yichen was coming, but she also forgot that he was coming. Su Qingsang was very embarrassed. To cover up her embarrassment, she asked Mizu to buy more groceries, while she went into the kitchen first. She put the rice in the pot and started to process the ingredients that Mizu had bought. She had just started when Hu Jiniao came back. Yes, here, this is for you. Hu Jiniao didn't care that his uncle was still standing next to him. He directly put the large bouquet of roses in front of Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang was a little surprised. What day is it? Why did you suddenly think of giving me flowers? Can't I give my wife flowers on any day? Hu Jiniao held Su Qingsang's hand. My wife is so good. It's only right that I send you flowers every day. He was so talkative. Seeing him like this, Su Qingsang joked, maybe a flower shop is about to close and you just happened to pass by. You don't believe me? Hu Jiniao narrowed his eyes and held her in his arms. Do you want me to buy a flower shop to give it to you? And let them send a bouquet of flowers every day from the beginning of the year to the end of the year? What do you think? Do you want to buy a clothing store so that I can wear new clothes every day? Next, there was a shop that sold bags and jewelry. Don't you think you should buy a street first? That's a good idea. Hu Jiniao agreed seriously. Why don't I accompany you to look around Rong City tomorrow? Let me know if you like any street. I'll buy it for you. What do you think? Crazy. That's right. I'm crazy for you. Hu Jiniao liked to tease her. He felt a sense of accomplishment when he saw her blushing and speechless. Su Qingsang glanced at him. When she was about to speak, she suddenly saw Zhang Yichen standing beside them. Seeing that Zhang Yichen had been staring at them, she suddenly felt embarrassed. Jiniao. Su Qingsang took half a step back and signaled to Hu Jiniao with her eyes. Stop it. It's okay. Uncle is one of us. Hu Jiniao really regarded Zhang Yichen as one of his own. He had participated in training with the army for a period of time. No matter how embarrassed he was, Zhang Yichen had seen him, so this idea was nothing to him. Su Qingsang didn't think that way. She asked Hu Jiniao to let go of her. I still have dishes to prepare in the kitchen. You guys talk first. She took half a step back from his arms and glanced at Zhang Yichen. Seeing that he was still staring at them, she explained to Hu Jiniao. We met Uncle yesterday. We haven't thanked him for what happened last time, so we invited him to dinner. Of course. After saying that, Hu Jiniao felt that something was wrong. Where did you meet Uncle? Rong City was so big. How could she meet him so easily? Last time she met him and this time? Su Qingsang was stunned. She didn't plan to tell Hu Jiniao about her visit to the Hu mansion. I'll go put the flowers in first. After saying that, Su Qingsang smiled at Hu Jiniao. Su Qingsang smiled at Hu Jiniao and went to find a vase to put the flowers in. Hu Jiniao walked to the sofa and sat down. He found a cup of tea in front of Zhang Yichen. It didn't look like it was freshly brewed. It seemed to have been there for a while. Uncle, you've been here for a long time? Yes. I'm off today. Hu Jiniao nodded. Where did you meet Su Qingsang yesterday? The Hu mansion. Zhang Yichen didn't understand why he couldn't tell him. I went to see uncle and happened to see him. Why did Su Qingsang go to the Hua mansion? They had just been there the day before. Hua Jinyao glanced in the direction where Su Qingsang disappeared. His eyes were deep and he didn't look as relaxed as before. What are you doing? Why did you go out on the weekend? Zhang Yichen suddenly changed the topic. He didn't know if it was intentional or not. Hua Jinyao didn't think about why Su Qingsang went to the Hua mansion. He started chatting with Zhang Yichen. Su Peijian was in a good mood when she left Hua Yifan's house in the morning. Everything was going according to her plan, and everything was going according to plan. She had successfully won Hua Yifan's heart. She had also won Old Master Hua's favor. She wasn't stupid. She could tell that Old Master Hua knew who she was. His attitude the day before wasn't because he really liked her, but because he wanted to give face to Hua Yifan. But that was enough for her. Even if Old Master Hua only liked her 30%, she could make it 70%. As for Su Qingsang, even if Old Master Hua liked her 100%, she would make it 30% or even nothing. Su Peijian didn't have a specific plan, but it didn't affect her good mood. As long as she entered the Hua mansion, she wouldn't have to worry about opportunities. There would be plenty of opportunities later. She didn't have to worry at all. But the most important thing now was to win Hua Yifan's heart. On the surface, she told Hua Yifan not to pursue the matter of her lying to him and using him. But when a man got angry, those things would become old scores that could be dug up at any time. Su Peijian decided to pick out a gift for Hua Yifan. Even if they were just using each other, she had to let him know that she was different from other women and other people. But Su Peijian didn't expect such a coincidence. She met Lu Tongjia. Chapter 563. It was noon in Rong City. The weather wasn't cold. She was shopping with two other women who looked like rich ladies. Auntie. The moment Su Peijian saw Lu Tongjia, she quickly went up to her and greeted her. Hello. You're here shopping too? She said it intimately as if they were very familiar with each other. Lu Tongjia looked at Su Peijian with an indifferent expression. She just responded and didn't want to talk to Su Peijian anymore. Su Peijian wasn't someone who would give up easily. Auntie, since we met, it must be fate. I often heard from Yifan that you and uncle took good care of him, and he was very grateful to you, Su Peijian. Lu Tongjia suddenly interrupted her. You don't have to use the way you coax the old man on me. Su Peijian didn't expect that she would be rejected before she even made a move. However, she wasn't discouraged at all. Auntie, you really misunderstood me. I'm telling the truth. As she spoke, Su Peijian glanced at the two women next to Lu Tongjia. Auntie, if you don't believe me, you can ask other people to see if I'm telling the truth. Who doesn't know that you're kind and generous? The two women next to her happened to be Mrs. Su Ruoli's mother, and Li Xiangyuan. They couldn't refute Su Peijian's words at that time. Lu Tongjia was no longer in the mood to shop after being interrupted by Su Peijian. She turned around and glanced at Mrs. Su and Li Xiangyuan. The two of them said that they had something to do, so they took their leave. Lu Tongjia didn't pay attention to Su Peijian after they parted ways. She took out her phone and called the driver to pick her up. Su Peijian blocked Lu Tongjia's way. Auntie, since we met, why don't we talk for a while? I have nothing to talk to you about. But I think we should have a lot to talk about. They were in front of a department store, which wasn't a good place to talk. Lu Tongjia looked at Su Peijian deeply and entered a coffee shop next to her. Su Peijian smiled and followed her. They sat down in the corner of the coffee shop. Su Peijian smiled warmly. Auntie, what would you like to drink? I'm not here for a drink. If you have anything to say, just say it. Auntie, I really just want to talk to you. After all, I feel that someone like Auntie definitely doesn't like to be deceived, right? What are you trying to say? I want to say, Su Qingsang, I think you might not know her identity. I know. She is Li Qianshua's daughter. And you? Lu Tongjia looked Su Peijian up and down and said sarcastically, you're the illegitimate daughter who popped out of nowhere. Su Peijian was a little embarrassed that her identity had been exposed. Auntie, why do you say that about me? Even if Su Qingsang isn't an illegitimate daughter, don't you still dislike her? So. Lu Tongjia leaned forward a little. You want to join forces with me to deal with Su Qingsang? Auntie, what are you talking about? If you don't like her, why do you have to be like this? Su Peijian didn't believe that Lu Tongjia would be indifferent to her proposal. Auntie, I heard that you wanted to marry another daughter-in-law. Didn't I help you? Help me? Lu Tongjia sneered. Help me or help yourself? Why don't you see this as helping each other? Helping each other? Lu Tongjia smiled. What? Do you think that you can make me cooperate with you just because you don't like Su Qingsang? Seeing Su Peixian's expression change, she stopped smiling. Su Peixian. I'm not afraid to tell you that I really don't like Su Qingsang, but I dislike you even more. Auntie? Since you are no longer the daughter of the Su family, you have to accept your fate. I can understand that you don't want to accept your fate and want to get back what you used to be. I can understand that, but I don't want to be the one who pushes you forward. But I don't like Su Qingsang, do I? Lu Tongjia looked at her with more and more sarcasm. You think too much. I don't like her. But she and He Jinyao are already married. What? Do you think that I would let Su Qingsang leave the Hua family for your selfish reasons? Auntie? That's enough. Lu Tongjia didn't have the patience to stay any longer. She stood up. You're too young to use me. Auntie, I really didn't mean that. It doesn't matter if you did or didn't. I don't like to be used anyway. I'm not interested in cooperating with you. After all, a woman like you who writes her ambition on her face is more annoying to me than Su Qingsang. After saying that, Lu Tongjia left right away. Su Peixian was left sitting there with a terrible look on her face. She didn't expect Lu Tongjia to be like this. Her chest was heaving up and down. Seeing Lu Tongjia's figure disappear, she slowly let out a breath. Good. Was she more annoying than Su Qingsang? She wanted to see who would have the last laugh between Su Qingsang and her. After dinner, it was still early. Su Qingsang went to the kitchen to cut some fruits and put them on the coffee table. Zhang Yichen glanced at her and thanked her in a low voice. You're welcome. Su Qingsang looked at He Jinyao and then at Zhang Yichen. She signaled He Jinyao to greet Zhang Yichen with her eyes and then went back to her room. She still had an unfinished paper in her hands. She wanted to use this time to finish it. Su Qingsang held the notebook with the paper she had printed beside her hand. She was writing on the bed, but she didn't know how she fell asleep. In the end, she was woken up by He Jinyao's kiss. She blinked her eyes and looked at He Jinyao's face. What time is it? It's past 4. Uncle left? He's still outside. He Jinyao kissed her cheek. Why did you fall asleep? Are you sleepy? Su Qingsang shook her head. Is Uncle okay? Why didn't he leave? You don't like him coming? Not really. Su Qingsang thought about the few times she had met Zhang Yichen. She felt a little uncomfortable. I just feel that he seems to have a lot of free time. He's not free. Every time he comes to Rong City he has something to do. Yes. Every time he came to Rong City he had something to do. Every time he had something to do, he had time to go to the Hua family. Every time he had something to do, he happened to see her in an embarrassing moment. Is he still eating at our place tonight? No. We're going out for dinner. He Jinyao put away the papers and notebooks on the bed. Li Junxing is back. Everyone said they're going to have a gathering tonight. I'll take you with me. Okay. Su Qingsang had a good impression of Li Junxing and knew that he was close to He Jinyao. Hearing this, she immediately got up and got dressed. However, halfway through she suddenly turned around and looked at He Jinyao. Uncle, you're not coming with us, are you? Yes. He knows Li Junxing and the others. Of course we're going together. Su Qingsang nodded and didn't ask any more. At that moment, He Jinyao got up and put his arms around her waist. Wife, did you go to the old house to see Grandpa yesterday? Su Qingsang stopped putting on her clothes. She turned around and looked at He Jinyao. Yes. Grandpa is usually alone at the Hua mansion. Although your parents are at home, they don't seem to be able to spend much time with Grandpa. I'll go see him when I have time. He Jinyao gave Su Qingsang a deep look, but didn't expose her lie. Su Qingsang felt uncomfortable being stared at by him. She couldn't help but say, actually, apart from spending time with Grandpa, I also want to. It's okay. He Jinyao interrupted her. If you have time, you can spend more time with Grandpa. Jinyao? Next time I'll go with you. Su Qingsang looked at him. She had a feeling that He Jinyao knew that she wanted to go to the old house to ask about old Master Hua. She lowered her head and wanted to say something else, but He Jinyao hugged her. Wife, give me some time. If she gave him some time, he would tell her what she wanted to know. That was what he wanted. She knew it. Su Qingsang put her face close to He Jinyao's ear and finally nodded gently. Okay. They didn't say what it was or when. The two of them already had a tacit understanding with each other. They both knew what the other meant. Su Qingsang let him hug her. Since he said so, she wouldn't ask. He would tell her when he wanted to tell her one day. However, because of his words, she also believed one thing. That was, what happened back then was definitely not what Lu Tongjia understood. Perhaps there was something else, but she didn't know what it was. Now she could only wait. Wait for He Jianyao to be willing to tell her. Li Junxing was the mayor of Lin City, so he didn't usually come back. He was an ambitious man. When he had nothing to do, he would fly around. He would investigate here and communicate there. This time he would only stay for 2 days. The dinner place was set at Xiangshan Restaurant. Su Qingsang had been here a few times, so she was very familiar with the place. Not long after she sat down, Wan Xianying came first. He sat in the empty seat next to Su Qingsang. On the other side of Su Qingsang was He Jianyao, and on the other side was Zhang Yichen. Seeing Wan Xianying's behavior, Zhang Yichen turned to look at He Jianyao. He was talking to Li Junxing about Lin City, so he didn't notice Wan Xianying's behavior. Zhang Yichen narrowed his eyes and glanced at Wan Xianying again. Sister-in-law. What is Mengwan busy with these days? Why doesn't she come to Rong City to hang out with you? She has her own things to do. How can she hang out with me every day? Su Qingsang knew what Wan Xianying was thinking. She couldn't help but remind him, don't you have her WeChat? You can contact her yourself. I know, but she doesn't talk to me. Wan Xianying felt a little wronged. Sister-in-law. Look at me. I'm not bad, right? Why does your bestie have such high standards? Don't wrongly accuse her. It's not that she has high standards. She just doesn't like you. So she doesn't like me? Isn't that high standards? Wan Xianying was a little unconvinced. Seeing him like this, Su Qingsang wanted to laugh. Don't be like this. It's not your problem. It's that you're really not her type. She had been in contact with Shi Mingwan recently, and she had also heard from her that Wan Xianying would contact her from time to time. He would also greet her every morning, noon, and night. In fact, Wan Xianying didn't feel it himself, but Shi Mingwan already felt troubled. It was just because he was He Jianyao's childhood friend that she didn't want to offend him too much. So she could only not reply to his messages. She didn't directly blacklist him. She couldn't tell Wan Xianying that. Su Qingsang knew. Zhan Haoze and Wan Xianying were not the same in terms of personality and appearance. More importantly, Shi Mingwan had been stubborn because of Zhan Haoze. She had been thinking about him for more than 10 years. Over the years there had been people who pursued her. But she really wasn't tempted at all. It wasn't something worth announcing. Wan Xianying said it in a very low voice. Su Qingsang said it in an even lower voice. No one else could hear them. They could only see that they were talking happily. Zhang Yichen suddenly stood up. When he met He Jianyao's somewhat confused gaze, he twitched the corner of his mouth. I'm going to make a call. He walked out. He Jianyao only asked one question and didn't ask anything else after that. Su Qingsang tried to persuade Wan Xianying a few more times, but found that it would have been better if she hadn't done so. He even told Li Junxing that he wanted to go to Lin City with him for a few days this time. Su Qingsang had a headache. Looking at Wan Xianying's serious face, she wondered if she should call Shi Mingwan to remind her. Whatever she wanted came. Shi Mingwan's phone rang. Su Qingsang glanced at it, then at Wan Xianying and got up to answer the call outside. Qingsang, I want to tell you a piece of good news. As soon as she picked up the phone outside the corridor, Su Qingsang heard Shi Mingwan's excited voice. She smiled. What good news? Last time, I took my design to the Imagination Fashion Design Competition in France. I've already passed the preliminary round. Really? You're amazing. Su Qingsang had heard about the competition before. At that time, Shi Mingwan didn't think she could pass it. Su Qingsang had been encouraging her and telling her to give it a try. So you're going to France? Yeah. After the preliminary round, I'm going to France to participate in the next competition. I'm so happy. Su Qingsang was happy for her good friend. She asked Shi Mingwan when she would be going. She was happy to know that it would be in the next week. Wan Xianying was just thinking about going to Lin City to find Shi Mingwan. Shi Mingwan was going to fly to France soon. The competition period was a bit long. They wouldn't be able to meet each other then. Thinking of this, Su Qingsang felt a little bad. Yes. Should she remind Wan Xianying? Forget it. If he went to France again, it would be really troublesome. After chatting for a while, Su Qingsang hung up. She looked up and found that Zhang Yichen was standing in front of her. The smile on her face quickly disappeared. Uncle. Call? Su Qingsang was stunned by the sudden question. She nodded subconsciously. Zhang Yichen glanced at her. He was about to leave, but his footsteps fell on the phone in her hand. Who was she talking to? Why was she so happy? Chapter 564. Realizing what he was thinking, Zhang Yichen's face darkened. He walked straight back to the private room. Su Qingsang was confused by the short and sudden question. She didn't know if it was just her imagination, but she felt that Zhang Yichen's attitude was weird. Without thinking too much, she followed him into the private room. Hua Jinyao had just finished talking to Li Junxing about Lin City when he saw Su Qingsang following Zhang Yichen into the room. Zhang Yichen's expression was serious, but he quickly calmed down after he entered the private room. Su Qingsang, who was following him, didn't notice his expression at all. She was still happy for Shi Mengwan, but also a little hesitant to tell Wan Xianying that Shi Mengwan was going to France. Looking at the two of them, Hua Jinyao suddenly felt that something was wrong. However, Li Junxing's voice soon caught his attention. He couldn't pay attention to Su Qingsang and Zhang Yichen anymore. Zhang Yichen didn't stay with them for long. Halfway through the meal he received a call. He had an urgent mission. He hung up, told Hua Jinyao and left. Hua Jinyao didn't mind. Zhang Yichen always came and left in a hurry. He was used to it. As for Su Qingsang, Wan Xianying was still pestering her to put in a good word for Shi Mengwan. She had no choice but to agree to ask for Shi Mengwan's opinion, but she couldn't guarantee the result. Wan Xianying thanked her profusely. Su Qingsang thought that he was such a fun guy. She didn't know why he liked Shi Mengwan so much that he was so persistent. She only hoped that Shi Mengwan would make it clear to him so that he would give up soon. When Zhang Yichen was about to leave, he saw Su Qingsang chatting happily with Wan Xianying. His eyes darkened and he kept walking outside. At that moment, Hua Jinyao happened to see Zhang Yichen's last look. His heart skipped a beat, and he suddenly turned around to look at Su Qingsang. She didn't notice it at all. Su Peijian and Old Master Hua finished the game of chess. She had a faint smile on her face. "Grandpa Hua, you're so good. You know my style. I've lost 3 games in a row. You're still young. It's good enough that you're like this." Old Master Hua had a smile on his face. Su Peijian had followed Hua Yifan to visit him today, and the two of them had played a few rounds together. Su Peijian was a sweet talker and good at chess. Old Master Hua really found her pleasing to the eye. Hua Yifan sat at the side with a faint smile on his face. He watched Su Peijian and Old Master Hua talking hand to hand. Su Peijian was halfway through the game when she looked at the stalemate on the chessboard. "Grandpa, you're amazing. I need to think about this step. I need to go to the bathroom first. I'll come back and play with you later." "All right. I'll wait for you to come back and figure out what to do next." Su Peijian smiled and got up to go to the bathroom. She had already been to the Hua mansion twice. "I know where the bathroom is." When he came out and passed the corridor, he happened to see the maid, Xiao Xia, holding a plate of fruits in her hands. It seemed like she had just come out from the kitchen. Xiao Xia knew that Old Master Hua liked Su Peijian very much, so she greeted her. Su Peijian looked at the plate of fruit in her eyes. "Is this for Grandpa? Give it to me. I'll take you out." "No, this is for Madam." Xia was referring to Lu Tongjia. Su Qingsang looked at the exquisite fruits on the plate and reached out to Xia. "Let me help you." "That's not a good idea, is it? You are the guest, how can I let you serve it?" "I'm fine. Last time, Auntie said that she had something to tell me. I'll go and ask what's going on." Since she had said so, Xiao Xia didn't think much of it and handed the fruit platter to Su Peijian. Su Peijian picked up the fruit platter and asked for Lu Tongjia's location. She carried the fruit platter upstairs. When she arrived at Lu Tongjia's room, she realized that the door wasn't locked. She was about to knock on the door when she heard voices coming from inside. "These two people really don't have any scruples." Lu Tongjia's voice rang out. She was obviously angry. Su Peijian stopped knocking on the door and stood there motionlessly. Silence. No sound came from inside. Soon, Lu Tongjia's voice was heard again. "Are you the only one who saw it, or did someone else see it?" "I'm the only one who saw it. Last time, Madam told me to keep an eye on young mistress." The voice sounded younger. Su Peijian didn't have time to think about who it was. She only paid attention to the content of the voice. "Young mistress? Wasn't that Su Qingsang?" Su Peijian narrowed her eyes and stood to the side to avoid the crack of the door. She moved closer to the inside so that she could hear more clearly. What a shameless person. Lu Tongjia couldn't say anything more. She snorted and said, "You can leave now. Delete the photos on your phone. Don't let anyone else see them." "Yes. Also, don't tell Jinyao about this for now." "Yes." Su Peijian's conversation ended. She quickly walked toward the stairs. The moment the door opened, she turned around and pretended that she had just come up. Someone came out. Soon she saw the person coming out. It seemed to be the maid of the Hua family. She narrowed her eyes and didn't bring the fruit platter in. Instead, when she passed by the maid, her foot suddenly slipped. The fruit platter in her hand fell and she let out a soft cry. "Miss Su, are you okay?" Xiaojiang looked at Su Peijian. She naturally knew Su Peijian. She had been here twice. "I'm fine." Su Peijian looked at Xiaojiang. She was still holding the phone in her hand. She immediately thought of what Xiaojiang had said. The photos on her phone? What photos? "Sorry, I couldn't walk steadily and accidentally dropped the fruit platter. Look, can you help me clean it up? This is for Auntie. I can't give it to her like this." Okay. These things were done by them. Xiaojiang didn't think much and squatted down to pick it up. Su Peijian took her phone. "I'll hold it for you. You clean it up. I'll go downstairs and get one." Okay. Xiaojiang wanted to clean up the fruit platter as soon as possible. She didn't think much and focused on picking up the fruits on the ground. Su Peijian took her phone and went downstairs. When she reached the stairs, she turned on Xiaojiang's phone. Fortunately, the other party didn't encrypt it. She flipped through the photo album and found some selfies and landscape photos of Xiaojiang. Other than that, she also found some other photos in an unencrypted folder. Looking at those photos, Su Peijian almost laughed out loud. Su Qingsang, I really didn't expect you to be so bold. No wonder Lu Tongjia scolded you. In the photo, Su Qingsang was cuddling with a man. The man hugged her from behind. In another photo, she was standing face to face with the man. Chapter 565. The man in the photo had a good temperament. He wasn't as handsome as Hu Jinyao, but he was strong and stylish. His facial features were well defined. More importantly, there were photos of him and Su Qingsang as well as photos of him alone. He looked in the direction where Su Qingsang had left, his eyes focused and eager. Su Peijian wouldn't believe that the man didn't have feelings for Su Qingsang. Su Peijian looked at the photos and smiled silently. Su Qingsang, you put such a big weakness in my hands. If I don't make good use of it, I'll be sorry for our sisterhood. Su Peijian sent the photos to her own phone through Bluetooth as fast as she could. Then she saved them one by one and quickly went downstairs. He ordered a new fruit platter to be served. Xiaojiang didn't notice that her phone had been touched. She was still grateful to Su Peijian for bringing her the fruit platter. Su Peijian, who had achieved her goal, naturally wouldn't go to Lu Tongjia's room to make trouble. She turned around and left. Old Master Huo was still waiting for her to finish the game. Su Peijian smiled and explained that she had been thinking for a long time. However, in this round she made a stupid move and lost in the end. It didn't matter if she lost. She could win it back elsewhere. Huo Yifan was confused by her unusual excitement. After leaving the Huo mansion, he couldn't help but ask Su Peijian what was so happy about. "I found something interesting. So I'm very happy." Su Peijian looked at the road ahead and smiled. She wouldn't show those photos to Huo Yifan right now. She still needed to think about how to make the best use of those photos. She was in a hurry just now, but she didn't miss that the background of the photo was the backyard of the Huo mansion. She could even see the parrot behind the two of them. Anyone who could enter the Huo mansion must be related to the Huo family. If they weren't related to the Huo family, they could be relatives of the Huo family. No matter which one it was enough to make Su Peijian excited. Seamless heaven gown? Huo Yifan confirmed again that Su Peijian's behavior today was unusual. Su Peijian turned to look at him. She tilted her head to the side and her face was full of smiles. "Nothing. I just found a way to make Grandpa Huo like me more." Huo Yifan's intuition told him that Su Peijian was lying. "No matter what you want to do in the Huo family, remember to tell me in advance. You should know that we are working together now." "Of course I won't forget." She wanted to find out who the man was through Huo Yifan. Naturally they couldn't leave him out. However, there was no need to show him the photo of the man standing with Su Qingsang. She needed to think clearly about what to do. Su Peijian smiled like a fox, which made Huo Yifan narrow his eyes. He stopped the car in front of them and wrapped his arms around Su Peijian's waist. Disregarding everything else, he kissed her lips. Su Peijian only slightly furrowed her brows and quickly turned the tables. The moment he retreated, she straddled him. "Why, do you want to play something new today?" "Yes." "Do you dare?" "There's nothing to be afraid of. If you dare, I naturally dare." She lowered her head and pressed her lips against Huo Yifan's in a good mood. Her eyes were full of ambition. That blatant and undisguised attitude made Huo Yifan angry. Regardless of everything else, he began to take off her clothes. Su Qingsang was awakened by someone's kiss. She couldn't stand the itchy feeling on her cheeks. She waved her hand unconsciously, but it was caught again. She couldn't move her hands, so she could only open her eyes. She found that Huo Jinyao's face was directly above her. "Morning, honey." Huo Jinyao gave her a peck on the lips as he spoke. Su Qingsang blinked her eyes. "What's wrong?" "The weather is good today." Huo Jinyao kissed her again. "Honey, let's go out and play. Don't you have to work today?" There were indeed many places in Rong City that she hadn't visited yet. However, Su Qingsang didn't expect that Huo Jinyao would be in the mood to go out with her today. She had surgery yesterday and the day before, so she took turns to rest today. It wasn't the weekend, was it? "No need. I have time today to accompany you." He had to stay outside for some time. Otherwise, how could he give those people a chance? Su Qingsang nodded and looked at the time. "Where to play?" "To tell you the truth, I'm playing. It's almost afternoon. I'm going somewhere in the morning." "Where to?" "Tang Mohan's new department store needs someone to cut the ribbon. We're going to stand on the stage for him." Tang Mohan's main business was entertainment and department stores. Now he had opened many chain stores all over the country. He did a good job in the entertainment area. This department store happened to be the 100th chain store under Tang Mohan's company. He specially invited Huo Jinyao to celebrate with him and asked him to cut the ribbon. Su Qingsang knew that they had a good relationship, so she quickly tidied herself up. When she was putting on her clothes, she chose a new Chanel suit. She looked completely different from her usual style when she worked in the hospital. "My wife is so beautiful today." Huo Jinyao looked at her with a face full of admiration. Su Qingsang glanced at him and swept her gaze over his body. He was wearing a dark three-piece suit and had a standard inverted triangle figure. His fine hair was combed neatly by him. He looked like a social elite. "My husband is also very handsome today." "Thank you." Huo Jinyao smiled and put his hand in front of Su Qingsang, signaling for her to hold his hand. Su Qingsang held his hand and glanced at him. The two of them smiled at each other and went out together. Tang Mohan's new department store was very big. It wasn't in the city but in a location closer to the suburbs. Many new residential areas had just been developed here. In addition, there were 2 business districts nearby. This location was undoubtedly quite insightful. There was a lot of traffic and the early publicity was in place. After the ribbon cutting, all kinds of activities began. It could be seen that there were a lot of people at the scene. Su Qingsang had never liked crowded places. After the two of them greeted Tang Mohan, they were about to leave. The department store had a total of 8 floors, and each floor operated different items. Huo Jinyao and Su Qingsang originally wanted to stroll around casually, but seeing so many people, the two of them gave up on this idea. They went to the elevator and planned to take a taxi to the underground parking lot. Unexpectedly, the elevator opened and the person who came out was Xiang Kaiping. Su Qingsang was stunned when she saw Xiang Kaiping. She didn't expect that the two of them would meet under such circumstances. Xiang Kaiping was also stunned when she saw Su Qingsang. The two of them just stood there without moving. Xiang Kaiping wasn't the only one in the elevator. Someone behind her was about to come out. Seeing that she was standing there without moving, she couldn't help but urge her. Xiang Kaiping had no choice but to quickly get out of the elevator. The people behind her also squeezed out, and Xiang Kaiping was squeezed to Su Qingsang's side. "Auntie." Su Qingsang greeted Xiang Kaiping. Her voice wasn't loud. In fact, she wasn't sure if Xiang Kaiping would still be willing to greet her now. Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Qingsang, then looked at her and Huo Jinyao's hand, then nodded gently as a response. This kind of attitude was already beyond Su Qingsang's expectations. With a smile on her face, she took a step forward. "Auntie, are you shopping here too?" Xiang Kaiping didn't say anything and just nodded again. Su Peijian was getting busier and busier. In the past, she ate one of her 3 meals at home. Now, almost none of her 3 meals were eaten at home. The company was managed well by her, and she received 2 new low-price sources of goods. If she criticized her too much, she would say that she was busy with work. In fact, after she took over, the business was indeed better than before. She could tell from the accounts that this daughter of hers was a capable person. However, the more capable her daughter was, the less time she spent with her. The less time they spent together, the more she couldn't help but think of Su Qingsang. Every time she thought of Su Qingsang, she began to regret and blame herself. How could she do this? Su Peijian was her daughter. In such a dilemma, Xiang Kaiping didn't want to stay at home anymore. During the day, she would come out and walk around when she had nothing to do. In fact, she knew that this department store had opened before. She didn't like crowds, but now she felt that the more people there were, the livelier it was. She didn't expect to meet Su Qingsang here. At this moment, facing her, she looked a little uncomfortable. "Auntie, have you eaten?" It was almost time for dinner, so Su Qingsang asked out of politeness. Xiang Kaiping shook her head. Su Peijian was always not at home. It was boring for her to eat alone, so she just ate casually. Back in Lin City, even if Su Qingsang was not at home, there was still a cook at home who would chat with her every day. Now, Xiang Kaiping shook her head. She hadn't eaten yet and she didn't have the stomach to eat. Su Peijian didn't come back last night. She called and she only said that she had something to do. She was her daughter, but she felt so far away from her. Xiang Kaiping didn't like this feeling, but now she couldn't even criticize Su Peijian. "Then why don't we eat together?" As Su Qingsang spoke, she glanced at Hu Jinyao. There was a hint of inquiry in her eyes, as well as some meaning that only they could understand. "Jinyao and I haven't eaten yet. Why don't we eat together?" Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Qingsang, then at Hu Jinyao. She tightened her grip on the strap of her bag and finally nodded again. Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao didn't take Xiang Kaiping further. On the top floor of the department store were all kinds of restaurants. The three of them chose one of the restaurants and entered. Su Qingsang sat down first, and after asking Hu Jinyao and Xiang Kaiping what they wanted to eat, she ordered. The waiter served tea and took away the menu. Only the three of them were left at the table. Hu Jinyao had a good impression of Xiang Kaiping, so the expression on his face was gentle. Su Qingsang looked at Xiang Kaiping and found that she didn't look particularly good. There were faint dark shadows under her eyes, and she looked more haggard than before in Lin City. Chapter 566. It was a simple greeting, but it made Xiang Caiping's eyes water and the tip of her nose sour. Was it good? Not good at all. She wanted to acknowledge Su Peijian as her daughter. After that, she realized that her daughter was not who she thought she was. She thought of Su Qingsang more than once, and the more she thought about it, the more she hated Su Qinghui. It was all Su Qinghui's fault. If he hadn't switched the child, how could her child have been spoiled like this? How could she not be close to her mother at all? She didn't say anything, but her expression said it all. Su Qingsang felt a little suffocated. She couldn't help but glance at Hu Jinyao. Hu Jinyao shook his head gently at her. Su Qingsang didn't ask any more. She picked up the teapot in front of her and poured some tea for Xiang Kaiping. "Auntie, drink this. I remember you said that you like black tea." Xiang Kaiping felt her nose sour again. She lowered her head to hide her emotions. The time she spent with Su Qingsang was about the same as the time she and Su Peijian met. However, Su Peijian still didn't remember what she liked to eat or drink. Su Qingsang, on the other hand, still remembered her preferences after spending a few months together. The dishes she ordered just now were basically according to her preferences. It was not the time to lose her composure. Xiang Kaiping looked at Hu Jinyao and Su Qingsang sitting opposite her. "How have you been?" "I'm fine." The conversation between the two of them was so polite and distant. Su Qingsang felt a little uncomfortable. "You know, Jinyao has always been good to me." Xiang Kaiping glanced at Su Qingsang, then at Hu Jinyao and finally nodded. "Yes, you have always been good." Did Hu Jinyao need to care about how he treated Su Qingsang? Of course it was good. There was another silence and no more words were said. Su Qingsang wanted to say something to Xiang Kaiping, but she realized that it was not appropriate to do so. The words of concern were stuck in her throat and she couldn't ask. The atmosphere of the meal was a little depressing. Su Qingsang was actually very concerned about Xiang Kaiping. She wanted to ask how she was getting along with Su Peijian, but she knew that she couldn't. Su Qingsang poured a bowl of soup for Xiang Kaiping. "Auntie, is your waist better?" Her waist had been rehabilitated in Lin City. Although it had almost recovered at that time, she didn't know if she had gone to see a doctor after coming to Rong City. "All right. Much better." Occasionally it would hurt a little, but she could endure it. Hearing Su Qingsang's words of concern, Xiang Kaiping recalled how Su Qingsang had taken care of her when she was in the hospital. She knew very well that this was Su Qingsang. If it was Su Peijian, would she be able to take care of herself like Su Qingsang? Thinking of Su Peijian, Xiang Kaiping knew that she was asking for too much. "That's good." Rong City was colder than Lin City. "You need to take care of that waist of yours. You must be careful not to carry heavy objects and don't overwork yourself." Halfway through her sentence, Su Qingsang realized that she had said too much. She pursed her lips and stopped talking. Xiang Caiping's heart ached again. She had been in Rong City for a few months. His waist was almost healed. But when the weather changed, it was indeed a little uncomfortable. After all, the collision at that time had been too hard. She was old and couldn't be compared to young people. But in the past few months, except for a few questions from Su Peijian when she first came, she hadn't mentioned anything else. In the past, even when Li Qianxue stole her man, she had never been jealous of her. Now she was really jealous of Li Qianxue. How could she have such a good daughter? She heard that her son was also an obedient child. Looking at Su Peijian, looking at the table full of dishes, Xiang Kaiping lost her appetite. After dinner, Su Qingsang glanced at Hu Jinyao and took the initiative to speak. "Andy, how did you get here? Why don't we drive you back?" I'll take the bus back myself." She was old and had nothing to do anyway. Xiang Kaiping didn't want to trouble Su Qingsang. "It's okay. We don't work today anyway." As Su Qingsang spoke, she took the initiative to walk to Xiang Caiping's side. She didn't hold her hand but kept half an arm's length away. "Auntie, just let us drive you." Hu Jinyao also chimed in, "Yes, Auntie, let's go." Xiang Kaiping couldn't argue with the two of them, so in the end she got into Hu Jinyao's car. Su Qingsang sat with her in the back seat. The two used to be mother and daughter, but now they looked at each other speechlessly. The car stopped in front of Xiang Caiping's small villa. Hu Jinyao looked at the environment in front of him. It was a nice place. The house should have been bought by Xiang Kaiping before. He didn't know that she had good taste. "Auntie, you live here?" "Yes." Xiang Kaiping nodded. "Do you want to come in and sit for a while?" "Next time. We still have something to do." Su Qingsang actually didn't want to meet Su Peijian and cause unnecessary misunderstandings. What she thought Xiang Kaiping could also think of. She wanted to say that Su Peijian wouldn't be at home during the day, but she didn't say it. She got out of the car first. When she turned to leave, she looked back at Su Qingsang. Your number, did it change?" "No. Whether it's my phone or WeChat, I haven't changed." She was afraid that Xiang Kaiping would look for her, but she felt awkward. Su Qingsang added, "Auntie, if you need anything, call me. Also, I work at the First City Hospital now. You can come and see me when you have time." "The First City Hospital?" "Yes, the one in the Jingdong district." Xiang Kaiping nodded and didn't say anything else. She waved her hand and left. Her footsteps were a little shaky. Su Qingsang looked at her and felt sad again. Before Hu Jinyao's car left the villa, Su Qingsang glanced at him. "Auntie doesn't seem to be doing well." Of course, Hu Jinyao didn't say it. Su Peijian didn't seem to want to acknowledge Xiang Kaiping at all. Since she came to Rong City, she had been busy with her own things. Even if she had time, she would rather think of ways to deal with Su Qingsang than spend more time with her biological mother. Su Qingsang bit her lip and turned to look at the villa behind her, which was already out of sight. "How about I come to visit Auntie next time?" "You can come if you want, but I don't agree." "Why?" "You came to visit Auntie out of kindness. If Su Peijian didn't know, then forget it. If Su Peijian knew, what do you think she would think?" She was already prejudiced and dissatisfied with Su Qingsang. Li Qianxue had already acknowledged Su Qingsang, and now she still wanted to snatch Xiang Kaiping? With Su Peijian's personality, she might do something crazy. Chapter 567. Su Qingsang had also thought about that. "I can call Auntie and come when Su Peijian is not around." Hu Jinyao didn't think that fire could be wrapped up in paper, not to mention that Su Peijian was here for Su Qingsang. "If you really want to see her, call her and arrange to meet her outside." Su Qingsang stopped talking. She knew Hu Jinyao's concerns. However, he said, "I'm just looking at Auntie. She doesn't seem to be doing well." Hu Jinyao was silent. No matter how bad their lives were, there was a limit to what they could do. Not to mention the fact that they couldn't help Su Peijian and Xiang Caiping's mother-daughter relationship. At this time, if he really wanted to do something for Xiang Kaiping might not accept it. After all, after this interaction, they could roughly guess that Xiang Kaiping was a very proud person. The fact that she didn't say a word for a long time was enough to explain the problem. She didn't want anyone to know that she didn't have a good relationship with Su Peijian. Actually, Auntie is really a very good person. Why can't Su Peijian accept her? Hu Jinyao couldn't answer that question. No matter how good Xiang Kaiping was, Su Peijian couldn't accept another person as her mother because of Li Qianxue's 20 years of influence. "She is different from you." Su Qingsang used to think that she didn't have a biological mother, so she naturally yearned for and was attached to her mother. However, Su Peijian already had a mother. She had been with her for more than 20 years and she cared for her very much. Now that he had to acknowledge a woman who had appeared out of nowhere, it would be a wonder if she would accept it. Su Qingsang could also think of what Hu Jingyao could think of. Lowering her head, she felt a little disappointed. She was still thinking about Xiang Kaiping even after she got out of the car. Hu Jingyao reached out to hold her hand, pulled her into his arms and gently patted her back. All right. Don't think about it. There are some things that you can't change. I know, I just feel a little sad. If you're really worried, pick a time when Su Peijian isn't at home to visit her and spend some time with her. All right. Su Qingsang thought so too. It would be impossible for Xiang Kaiping to come to him on her own. It would be more appropriate for her to look for Xiang Kaiping. Let's go. We're here to have fun today. Have fun. Su Qingsang nodded. Since they were out to have fun, it was time to relax and have fun. Hu Jingyao took her to a newly planned wetland park in Rong City. Every year, tens of thousands of migratory birds would rest here. The local area built a protected area. In winter, the migratory birds all flew to the south for the winter. Now that the season was getting warmer, many birds were flying back. It was not a problem for the wanderers to see it, but they were isolated outside the protective net. The outer edge of the net was the wetland park that they were going to visit today. The scenery was quite good. Occasionally, migratory birds from the reserve next door could be seen flying over. They were not afraid of people and would even stop. However, if someone approached it, it would immediately fly away. It was the first time that Su Qingsang had seen these birds up close. His gaze was filled with curiosity. Is that a red-crowned crane? Yes. Hu Jingyao followed her gaze. Look, there's more over there. So beautiful. Su Qingsang's face was full of admiration. If she wasn't afraid of attracting those red-crowned cranes, she would have gone forward to take a closer look. Around the path of the wetland park, there was a small pavilion in front for people to rest. The pavilion was also a viewing pavilion. One could see the reserve in the distance and most of the lake view of the wetland park. It wasn't a weekend, so there weren't many people. When Su Qingsang and Hu Jingyao walked forward, they saw that there were already people inside. It was a mother and daughter. The mother looked very young. She was holding her daughter's hand and patiently pointing out some birds outside to her daughter. While showing her daughter, she didn't forget to introduce them. What kind of bird was this? What habits did it have? What kind of bird was that? What did it look like? When Su Qingsang and Hu Jingyao entered the small pavilion, the mother was answering her daughter's questions. It could be seen that she had done a lot of homework before coming here. She could answer all the questions asked by her daughter. Su Qingsang stood there and didn't disturb the mother. Instead, she turned her head to look at Hu Jingyao. She wanted to tell him that they should continue walking and give this place to the mother and daughter. However, she didn't expect to find that Hu Jingyao's gaze had been on the mother. His eyes weren't looking at that person. It was as if he was looking at someone through the mother. Su Qingsang suddenly thought of that night when Hu Jingyao called her mother. She lowered her head, and her eyes were inexplicably sore. Jingyao, look. This is a giraffe. Do you know that? Giraffes live in. Mom, giraffes have such long necks. Don't they get tired? Also, what do they do when they sleep? Jingyao, you're so cute. You can even think of such a question. Not bad. So smart. Let me tell you, giraffes are very tired, but they rarely lie down to sleep. Because it's too dangerous. Lu Tongjia's voice overlapped with the mother in front of her. Hu Jingyao's face was a little gloomy. Feeling Su Qingsang's gaze on him, he smiled at her, pursed his lips, and silently pulled Su Qingsang's hand to the other side. Su Qingsang's lips moved. She wanted to say something, but in the end she didn't say a word. Hu Jingyao had told Hu Mingguang about what Lu Tongjia had done. During this period of time, the relationship between the mother and son had once again fallen to a freezing point. Su Qingsang looked at his chiseled side profile and thought of the look in his eyes just now. She felt a faint pain in her heart. She reached out and held Hu Jingyao's hand. Not wanting Hu Jingyao to think of Lu Tongjia again, she pretended to be relaxed and said, "That little girl just now was really cute, wasn't she?" Yes. He didn't see it, and he didn't even see what the mother looked like. He only thought of Lu Tongjia, and his mind even unconsciously recalled that childhood scene. In fact, before the accident, that kind of scene had happened many times in the Hu family with the brothers. Lu Tongjia used to be a good mother. Hu Jingyao. Su Qingsang suddenly stopped and looked at him. Her eyes were a little eager. Why don't we have a child too? Hu Jingyao froze for a moment and turned to look at Su Qingsang. He didn't respond to her words. Really? I think I can also learn to be a good mother. Su Qingsang blinked and her eyes were full of encouragement. I believe you will also be a good father. Hua Jingyao didn't speak. His lips were tightly pursed. He was obviously not interested in her proposal. Su Qingsang was a little depressed. She wanted to say a few more words, but Hua Jingyao had already taken her hand and walked forward. Hua Jingyao, let's talk about it later. Later? Did that mean it could be discussed? Su Qingsang actually didn't mean that they had to have a child now. But she was really willing to try what Li Qianxue said. Maybe the relationship between Hua Jingyao and Lu Tongjiao would ease after having a child. Hua Jingyao didn't give her a chance to ask any more. I think I saw a white swan just now. Let's go and take a look. He changed the topic, so Su Qingsang naturally couldn't continue. During the rest of the time, Hua Jingyao didn't even give her a chance to speak. It didn't matter. Maybe she could try to get Hua Jingyao to agree in other ways. Or rather, he had to agree. Su Qingsang thought that Hua Jinyao's attitude during the day had at least softened. So that night she began to put it into practice. She changed into the pajamas that Hua Jinyao had bought for her and sprayed some perfume for the first time. Looking at herself in the mirror, which was completely different from usual, Su Qingsang began to feel embarrassed. She took a deep breath and gave herself an encouraging look in the mirror before walking out of the bathroom. Hua Jinyao took a shower first today. At the moment he was lying on the bed reading a book. The faint fragrance in the air suddenly made him raise his head. The first thing he saw was the extremely sexy Su Qingsang, whose clothes barely covered her figure. He narrowed his eyes and watched her approach step by step. Aren't you tired? Wasn't she tired after playing outside for a whole day? Su Qingsang shook her head, lifted one foot and half knelt on the bed. She touched Hua Jinyao's face with one hand. Hua Jinyao smelled the perfume on her body. He put the book in his hand aside and was about to take the initiative, but Su Qingsang didn't give him the chance. Su Qingsang believed that Hua Jinyao couldn't resist her move today. Although this move was old-fashioned, it worked on Hua Jinyao. As expected, Hua Jinyao couldn't wait for what she was going to do next. Slowly she sank into it. When she was lost, she thought that Hua Jinyao would do as she wished. However, she found that he didn't forget to get up and take precautions at such a time. Something flashed through Su Qingsang's mind so fast that she couldn't catch it. And then, Hua Jinyao didn't give her any more time to continue thinking about it. In the next few days, Su Qingsang tried all kinds of methods and changed into all kinds of pajamas. She even went online and bought some pajamas that she was too embarrassed to wear according to Hua Jinyao's preferences. However, she found that the final result was not satisfactory. No matter how passionate and addicted Hua Jinyao was, he wouldn't forget to take precautions at the last moment and not give her the slightest chance of getting pregnant. Even if she explicitly hinted, Hua Jinyao didn't move at all. At night, Su Qingsang rubbed the back of her waist. After taking a shower, she changed into her usual cotton pajamas and quickly lay down on the bed. Hua Jinyao turned over and got on the bed as usual, but stopped when he saw the cotton pajamas she was wearing. Not playing today? Who was playing? Su Qingsang pulled up the quilt to cover her body. Only a small face was left exposed outside. Her eyes stared straight at Hua Jinyao, and there was obvious dissatisfaction in them. He knew about it, didn't he? He knew about her plans, but he still looked at her like this. During this period of time he was like, Su Qingsang turned her face away and decided to ignore Hua Jinyao today. Hua Jinyao looked at her angry little face and couldn't help but kiss her on the cheek. Are you angry? No. She had done it herself. What was there to be angry about? And she said she wasn't angry? Hua Jinyao turned over and lay down next to her. He reached out and pulled her waist into his arms. He lowered his head and gently kissed the top of her hair. You're not coming today? I'm not coming. Not just today. Tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, and the day after that, I'm never coming. Hua Jinyao couldn't help but laugh at her angry words. He couldn't help but kiss her cheek. Don't touch me. My back hurts. I'm sleepy. I want to sleep. Her physical strength wasn't as good as Hua Jinyao's. In order to have a child, she had really spent a lot of effort to accompany him. But in the end, the result was still not satisfactory. She wanted to cry, okay? Hua Jinyao's big hand was on her waist. Su Qingsang was really afraid. Really, don't come. I'm tired. As she spoke, she wanted to hide to the side, but the bed was only so big. How could she hide? Hua Jinyao didn't let go of his hand. Instead, he gently rubbed the back of her waist. His strength was moderate and he rubbed on the spot. Su Qingsang's back pain was relieved a lot, and the expression on her face also relaxed a little. Wife. Hua Jinyao's strength didn't decrease and he rubbed her more and more relaxed. Let's spend a few years alone, okay? Su Qingsang was stunned for a moment. She wanted to raise her head, but Hu Jinyao pressed her waist to stop her from moving. It had been a long time since she heard him talk about this. I don't want to lie to you. In fact, I'm really not ready yet. I don't know how to be a father. When he spoke, his chest trembled. Su Qingsang bit her lip. It was the first time she heard him mention the word father. She suddenly thought of something. What did Hua Mingguang do during the years when Lu Tongjia ignored him? As Hua Jinyao's father, he didn't bear the responsibility that a father should have. He didn't try to ease the relationship between Lu Tongjia and Hua Jinyao. If she seriously thought about it, Hua Mingguang was not a good father, was he? Hua Jinyao changed his hand and continued to rub her waist. Isn't it good for us to be like this now? Why should we let a child share our time and energy with each other? He was right, but Su Qingsang knew that it was just an excuse. She didn't raise her head again. She hugged Hua Jinyao and rubbed her face against his chest. Okay. We'll talk about it later. She didn't say anything more. If he didn't want to have children, then so be it. Since she had promised him time, she would wait slowly. One day, when he thought it through and was willing to have children, she would talk about it. Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao had talked it out, so the special exercise they did every night was naturally reduced a lot. At least, Su Qingsang really couldn't do it, and she didn't have the confidence to do it every day. In fact, Su Qingsang had considered not only Lu Tongjia's position, but also Hua Jinyao's. As the eldest grandson of the Hua family, she was worried that he would have his responsibilities. But if he didn't think about it at all, then why should she worry? When she relaxed, Su Qingsang was able to enjoy the time they spent together. Naturally, their relationship would be better. As for the thing that caused Lu Tongjia and Hua Jinyao to fall out, Su Qingsang chose not to mention it. Chapter 568. Su Qingsang's car was parked outside the villa. She looked inside. During the day, the reflective glass made it impossible to see if there was anyone inside. She couldn't help but take out her phone and call Xiang Kaiping. 3 minutes later, Xiang Kaiping came out and opened the door for her. Su Qingsang stood at the door and handed the fruit and some supplements she had bought before she came to Xiang Kaiping. "Auntie, this is good for your waist. And this? Our hospital's new waist physical therapy device. I've asked a few patients and they say it's quite useful." Su Qingsang explained. Xiang Kaiping took it and nodded. She thanked Su Qingsang in a very low voice and let Su Qingsang into the house. The villa was very clean and cozy. It was very Xiang Caiping style. Su Qingsang sat down and didn't worry too much. Xiang Kaiping said that Su Peijian would have gone to work at this time. She wouldn't come back until night. In fact, even if it was night, she might not come back, but Xiang Kaiping wouldn't tell Su Qingsang this. She got up and went to the kitchen to cut some fruit and poured a glass of juice. Su Qingsang looked at the glass of orange juice. Xiang Kaiping actually remembered. She felt a little sour at the tip of her nose. She just lowered her head to hide the emotion. "Auntie, you don't have to be so polite. Why don't you hire a nanny to help you do these things?" "I hired a nanny. She went out to buy groceries. I'm not too old to move. I'll do it myself if I can." Su Qingsang had always known that she couldn't stay idle, so she didn't talk about that topic. Instead, she took out the waist physical therapy device and taught her how to use it. It's very simple. The device wasn't cheap. There weren't many people in the hospital who could afford it. Su Qingsang hadn't used it herself. She only found out after asking her colleagues. This time she explained it very clearly. Xiang Kaiping looked at Su Qingsang's side profile and felt a little sad. "You don't look very well. Have you been too tired recently?" In the end, he still said those words of concern. Su Qingsang had already explained the function of the physical therapy device and was packing up. She stopped because of Xiang Caiping's words. "No, I'm not tired." Previously, the matter of wanting a child was a little too much. Indeed, he hadn't slept well. He had been catching up on his sleep for the past 2 days. Otherwise, the dark circles under her eyes would have been worse a few days ago. Hua Jinyao also knew that, so he didn't touch her these days. He only hugged her to sleep so that she could rest well. "I know you and Hua Jinyao are still young, but your body is your own. You should take care of yourself and not indulge yourself too much." Xiang Kaiping had lived with Su Qingsang, so she knew what had happened between Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao. After saying that, he felt that he had said too much. These things were no longer something that she could manage. Su Qingsang was stunned and blushed. But at the same time he felt the warmth of being cared for by his mother. "Auntie. You too." Su Qingsang gently held her hand. No matter what, you have to take care of yourself. Remember to take these tonics. Also, make sure to use this physical therapy equipment. Xiang Kaiping looked at her hand and nodded gently. Su Qingsang didn't stay for dinner. She had hesitated for a while before deciding to visit Xiang Kaiping today. Before she left, the woman who helped Xiang Kaiping came back. Su Qingsang breathed a sigh of relief. It was good that someone was taking care of her. When she was about to leave, Su Qingsang couldn't help but say that to Xiang Kaiping. "Auntie, if there's nothing else, call me. I'll come to see you then." Su Qingsang and Xiang Kaiping both knew that the so-called nothing else referred to when Su Peijian was not at home. Xiang Kaiping looked at her and nodded vigorously. After that, Su Qingsang chose to visit Xiang Kaiping a few times when Su Peijian was not at home. She didn't know if it was because of the tonics she bought, or because she visited Xiang Kaiping. She could feel that Xiang Kaiping's complexion was much better. She was also using the physical therapy equipment. It was said that her back pain had been greatly relieved. There weren't many things that Su Qingsang could do, but these few things made her feel calm. She didn't tell anyone about visiting Xiang Kaiping, except for the first time to Hua Jinyao, especially Li Qianxue. Li Qianxue didn't know that she would visit Xiang Kaiping. She and Li Qianxue had video calls almost every day and they talked about many things. However, there were two things that the mother and daughter had a tacit understanding not to mention. One was Su Peijian, and the other was Su Qinghui. Su Qingsang just wanted to be nice to Xiang Kaiping and make her feel better. Xiang Kaiping also knew that, so she had a tacit understanding not to mention Su Peijian or anyone else in the Su family in front of her when she visited. This was the tacit understanding between her and Xiang Kaiping. Every time Xiang Kaiping called her, it was after Su Peijian had gone out, so Su Peijian never knew that Su Qingsang had been there. The weather was getting hotter and it was already early summer in Rong City. Su Peijian returned home that day and found that Xiang Kaiping was not in the living room. This was really a bit surprising. Usually at this time she would be downstairs waiting for her to eat. Even if she knew that she would not come back, she would still wait there. Su Peijian was not used to not seeing her today. After thinking about it, she went upstairs to Xiang Kaiping's room to see what she was doing. Before she reached the door, she heard Xiang Kaiping talking to Ms. Zhao, the housekeeper hired by the family. She was going to go straight in, but she suddenly stopped. "Sister Xiang, that Miss Su, will she come to see you in a few days? She just came a few days ago and should be here in 2 days. What's the matter?" "I tried this physical therapy device of yours and it really works. I want Miss Su to bring me one. I can give her money." When Ms. Zhao was young, she did not have good confinement, so she also had a problem with her back from time to time. The last time she came, she had a back pain again, so Xiang Kaiping asked her to try it. Today, Ms. Zhao accidentally stretched her back when she was moving things, so Xiang Kaiping asked her to try the physical therapy device again. "Okay. Why don't I call her and ask her to bring one over for you first? You can use it at home." "Thank you in advance, Sister Xiang." Ms. Zhao's voice was filled with gratitude. "To be honest, Miss Su is really a good person. Is she your sister's daughter?" Xiang Kaiping was silent. She could not answer this question. Since she did not want to say, Ms. Zhao did not ask. "I heard that she is a doctor? She is so young, but she is really capable." "Yes. She is an obstetrician." In fact, Su Qingsang was very busy in the hospital. She had to go back to the Hua family to spend the weekends with old Master Hua. She had to build a relationship with Hua Jinyao. She could still find time to visit him. Speaking of which, it was really thoughtful of her. She is so capable. He was young and capable. She is also a good person. Look at the tonics on your table. They were all bought by Miss Su, right? Yes. Xiang Kaiping nodded. The table was full of tonics suitable for middle-aged and elderly people. They were all bought by Su Qingsang. She did not buy them randomly. She was a doctor, so she bought them after careful selection. Apart from anything else, Xiang Kaiping's sleep during this period of time was indeed much better. "Miss Su is so nice. You can take her as your goddaughter next time." Ms. Zhao was in physical therapy, so she tried to find something to say. "It's a pity that you don't have a son. Otherwise you could marry her." "She is married," Xiang Kaiping said lightly. "Married at such a young age? I can't tell. Her husband is so lucky." "Yes. Of course he was lucky to have a wife like her. He must be lucky to have a daughter like her." Su Peijian stood at the door with a sullen expression. She clenched the phone in her hand, her expression extremely gloomy. Without alerting the people inside, Su Peijian left quietly and returned to her room. She sat down on the bed in the room, still holding her phone in her hand. She had been very busy recently. 2 or 3 supermarkets were not enough for her ambition. She wanted more. She needed more, which meant that she needed more resources now. And Hui Yifan was her best resource now. After all, she had been carefully trained by Li Qianxue and Su Qinghui. Naturally, she had her own sharp side when it came to business. It was true that Hui Yifan and she worked together and used each other. But when they had a common goal, they would certainly work together. Hui Yifan was determined to prove himself. Under her instigation, under her encouragement, he secretly opened a company. The company was under her and Hui Yifan's name. It was now in the beginning stage. They needed orders. Su Peijian had just handed over the plan, but Hui Yifan was bold enough to take out an order from Tianyu Group. This was the first order of their new company. Su Peijian attached great importance to it, and so did Hui Yifan. The two of them had been extremely busy recently, so Su Peijian had neglected Xiang Kaiping. Not to mention coming back for dinner. Sometimes she didn't even come back to sleep. Today it was because Hui Yifan went to confirm the final details with the other party that she remembered to come back to see Xiang Kaiping. Unexpectedly, Xiang Kaiping didn't need her to see her at all. Someone was already rushing to be a filial daughter. Su Qingsang, I haven't thought about how to deal with you for your previous troubles. But you came to provoke me first. What? Not only did you snatch away the mother who raised me, but now you're not even letting go of the mother who gave birth to me? Su Peijian felt that she really couldn't take this lying down. Her disgust and hatred for Su Qingsang doubled at this moment. She stood up and paced back and forth in the room. She suddenly took out her phone and flipped through the photos of Su Qingsang and the wild man. In fact, she had seen the photos of the man and Su Qingsang hugging each other a few times over the past few days. It was just a faked photo. If there was anything, it was not solid evidence. If she wanted solid evidence, she was afraid that she would need more evidence. Su Peijian flipped through the photos again and still felt that they were not suitable for direct use. After thinking about it, she sent the single photo of Zhang Yichen to Hui Yifan. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.